After 5 years and an engagement, my fiancé's hurtful comment and doubts about marriage ended our relationship. This morning, his mother called me in tears. Dominic and I have been dating for little over 5 years, and we have been engaged for the past 8 months. We met at a housewarming party through mutual acquaintances, just two folks who got along because they disliked IPAs and liked 90s cartoons. After dating for a year, moving in after 2, adopting beans at 3, and getting engaged last summer, our relationship progressed. Simple proposal, Saturday morning hike to our favorite vista, where he eagerly removed the ring box from his pocket. Yes, I said. We quickly chose October and have been preparing everything, mostly me while he nods. Dominic started making odd statements while arranging our wedding 3 months ago. Uncertain, not negative. When I showed him various places, he'd say, "That's a lot of money for just one day," or, "Do we really need to invite all those people?" I ignored it as male behavior or economic concerns. Later, my wedding texts were answered late. When I sent him caterer options, he'd reply hours later with "looks fine," or "whatever you want." When I asked if everything was well, he'd say he was busy at work, his construction company had some big projects. Last month, he spent more time with coworker Paul. They had beers or watched games at Paul's house after work. Again, nothing special, but more often. He seemed distant when he got home, checking his phone more and paying less attention. I tried to tell my best friend, Lena. She suggested a date night to bond over pre-wedding worries. Last Friday, I made reservations at a new Italian restaurant downtown, wore a nice dress, not something fancy, just something I hadn't worn in a while, and bought Dominic's favorite beer to keep in the fridge. Date night failed. He barely spoke during supper. He revealed that he wasn't sure he was ready when I mentioned finalizing our honeymoon plans. Everything, from honeymoon to wedding and marriage. Shocked. He was uncertain after 5 years together and 8 months engaged. He recalled talking to Paul about how marriage changes things and mentioned Paul's brother's terrible divorce when I asked. As the conversation grew, I tried not to make a noise in the restaurant while feeling like my life was falling apart. We barely touched our entree. Silence and tension permeated the ride home. He avoided talking at our apartment, saying he wanted time to think before sleeping on the couch. The next morning was awful. We navigated a shared Airbnb like strangers. He suggested lunch with Paul and coworkers in downtown sports bar The Rusty Nail and watch the game. Too emotionally exhausted to protest. A few hours later, Lena called to tell me to leave the flat. We had coffee, and I unpacked everything. Lena listened intently, suggesting Dominic was worried about the wedding. I usually decompress by wandering Target after coffee. I bought useless throw pillows and shampoo because retail therapy is therapy, right? By early evening, I was relaxed and went home. Kyler, Dominic's coworker whom I met at the business Christmas party, texted me as I drove into our apartment complex. The message inquired about my well-being and noted that the Rusty Nail had gotten strange. I called Kyler instead of messaging. He was initially hesitant to talk, but after some coaxing, he did. The boys had been bugging Dominic about wedding plans, and when Paul asked if he was ready to be with one woman forever, Dominic expressed doubts. Dominic, evidently drunk, said, "If you were prettier, I'd be more excited about marrying you." Paul asked him what was holding him back, and Dominic laughed. Kyler told me he and other guys confronted Dominic about the comment, but Dominic got defensive and said they couldn't take a joke. I cried for 20 minutes in my car after that call. The man I loved for 5 years, whom I believed loved me, joked about my appearance as a reason he wasn't ready to marry me. Dominic was asleep on the couch as I entered, still in his clothes. The place reeked of old beer. I locked beans in the bedroom. I smelled Dominic's apology meal, coffee and bacon on Sunday morning. He looked hungover and sheepish, like food would fix everything. I told him what Kyler told me, and his face dropped. He claimed ignorance and inebriation to lessen the situation. He said he murmured something dumb to stop the boys taunting him for being strapped down. He exacerbated, guys being guys, by supporting them. We discussed him humiliating me in front of his friends, but he denied that was his goal. He said that he was worried about wedding costs and pressure, but I couldn't get over how he exploited my beauty as a cruel joke. I couldn't stay at his flat. I took my handbag to Elliot's apartment. My brother has always been my refuge in tough times. When I told him what happened, he was furious and ready to face Dominic. I calmed him by stating I needed space and a place to stay until I thought things out. Dominic texted apologies and invitations to chat at home throughout Sunday. Only once did I say I needed time. I phoned in sick on Monday because I couldn't handle taking dentist office calls while pretending everything was fine. About 9 a.m., Valerie, Dominic's mother, called Monday morning. We've always gotten along, and she's been more supportive than my mother, who lives in Florida with husband number 3. She seemed agitated, saying Dominic had called her the night before and I needed to know something. She asked if we could meet somewhere to chat, so I'm waiting in my car outside the coffee shop where I'm supposed to meet Valerie in 15 minutes, wondering what else to know and if my 5-year relationship is over. I never thought I'd write this. I keep looking at my engagement ring, wondering whether I should have expected this. Was I wrong, or did things shift so fast? Should I follow Valerie? How could she say anything to fix this? First, I'd like to thank everyone for their overwhelming support of my initial piece. I wasn't expecting thousands of comments. I tried to read as many as I could between weeping bouts and stress-eating emergency Oreos from my brother's pantry. I met Valerie, Dominic's mother, and I'll discuss it at the end of this update. So much has happened in the past 2 days, and I'm still processing everything. I called in sick again after publishing on Monday. I had just 2 sick days in the preceding year and sounded like death on the phone, but my supervisor was nice. I spent most of the morning in Elliot's spare room, storage closet, reading your comments and organizing my thoughts. At lunchtime, Lena brought sandwiches from a deli near her hospital. Despite not eating since Sunday, I forced myself to consume a few bites. Lena softly reminded me I couldn't ignore Dominic forever. We lived together, shared accounts, and had to talk. She was right, I couldn't stay at my brother's place forever, especially since Elliot's girlfriend was coming over for dinner. I didn't want to be Taco Tuesday's sad third wheel. I took a shower, grabbed one of Elliot's hoodies, don't judge, it felt wonderful, and drove home after Lena left. I practiced my speech the whole time. I would remain calm, adult, and receive answers without yelling or crying. Dominic's truck was in our parking spot when I pulled in. He should have worked. My stomach knotted as I approached our second-floor apartment steps. I opened the door to find him on the couch in sweatpants, looking exhausted, surrounded by wedding planning binders I'd made over the last 8 months. Little Trader Bean snuggled with him. He was surprised and relieved to see me and stated he was taking personal time off. He was probably reviewing all the wedding preparations to figure out how he bungled it so badly. I stood by the door, not ready to sit next to him, and told him that wedding plans wouldn't change his mind. We had a long, difficult conversation. He apologized again for the bar comment, calling it terrible and not believing it. He said he was trying to appear cool in front of his buddies when I asked why he would say something he didn't believe, which made me even angrier. Before the bar incident, I reminded him during dinner that he had misgivings about our wedding even when sober. He admitted to being anxious about a late work assignment, Paul's marriage horror stories, and our wedding money. He didn't tell me his problems until they exploded in the worst way. As we talked, he revealed a new fear, becoming his father. Dominic rarely talked about his father, who left him at 12 after having an affair with a coworker and moving to Arizona to start a new life. Dominic had always said it didn't bother him, but he now admits he was worried about a genetic predisposition to cheat or abandon his family. I explained that he was not his father and that genetics do not affect relationships. His comment was telling. He wondered if he could pledge eternity when it seemed impossible from his childhood. He hesitated to say he had spoken with Kyler when I asked if he had told anyone else. Since Kyler joined the group, they had become closer, and Kyler had relationship troubles. This explained why Kyler called me about the bar incident. He knew Dominic's concerns. When I asked Dominic about his problems, the conversation soured. He was honest. He was scared, anxious, and unsure about marriage while loving me. He said he kept thinking about how his parents were happy until they weren't and didn't want to put us in that situation. I wondered why he hadn't spoken up sooner. He said he was afraid I wouldn't think he loved me enough. I saw the irony. Hiding his anxieties created the situation he wanted to avoid. I inquired if his joke about my appearance was a genuine lack of interest, and he said he'd always thought I was gorgeous. He mentioned our first meeting at the housewarming party and my green sweater and his terrible beer pong skills. He said he made the comment out of insecurity and a desire to look in control in front of his friends rather than stuck. I asked a crucial question as we talked. Were his doubts against marriage in general or just marrying me? His sluggish response told me everything. He finally admitted that he was worried about marriage and commitment but also about our long-term compatibility. This hurt more than comments about my beauty. He was still unclear if we were compatible after 5 years. He explained how we had evolved since our early 20s. My increased need for preparation versus spontaneity and his abandoned hopes of launching a business. He asked if we had grown closer or apart, even though I told him partnerships change. I was emotionally weary by then. I told him I needed time to think about his public humiliation, secret fears, and now our compatibility anxiety. He told us to try therapy or couples counseling, but I insisted on separation. He noticed my phone vibrating as I packed more clothes. I found 3 Valerie missed calls. With everything going on, I forgot about our coffee date. Dominic looked worried after I mentioned this. My mother called crying the morning before, stating she needed to talk about something urgent. After calling her Sunday night, he replied clearly. When I asked what he told her, he was pale and reluctant to look at me. He made vague references to their fight and his doubts, but I was dubious. When pressed, he said he couldn't explain and suggested I ask his mother. I called Valerie after leaving. She reacted instantly, worried I hadn't attended our meeting. I replied I was with Dominic at the flat. She requested that we meet promptly since she had important news. Her voice seemed strange when I mentioned being with Dominic, which reinforced my fears that I was missing something essential. After agreeing to meet Valerie in 30 minutes, I asked Dominic what his mother knew that I didn't. Remorse and resignation filled his face when he looked up. He said he should have told me anything and suggested I go to his mother, promising to leave when I returned. I rapidly packed a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, and my laptop. Dominic told me he loved me at the door, but I said love isn't enough. Karina, Dominic's sister, called me on my way to Valerie. She was worried about Dominic and me after hearing from Paul about the bar situation and seeing that Dominic wasn't responding to her texts when their mother was unhappy. Karina looked surprised when I told her I was meeting Valerie and asked if it was about Maria. Name struck me like a truck. What about Maria? Karina's horror and hasty retreat suggested she had accidentally revealed something significant. She apologized and recommended me to listen to Valerie, but refused to elaborate despite subsequent attempts. Valerie was waiting at a window table when I entered the coffee shop parking lot. She had red, puffy eyes. I thought what she would say would change everything. My phone buzzed with a text as I reached her table. Dominic said, "Whatever my mom tells you, please remember that I do love you. I just got scared and made terrible mistakes. I'll understand if you can't forgive me." I put my phone away, breathed deeply, and sat across from Valerie. Second update. Thanks for supporting my earlier posts. Reading your comments is comforting and overwhelming. Many of them have gone unanswered, but I read them and appreciate the advice. Lena's flat is my new writing spot. I hated returning to Elliot's or our apartment after meeting Valerie yesterday. Lena's pull-out couch is slightly cozier than Elliot's storage room futon. Pepper, her cat, doesn't mind me bawling over my oatmeal at 2 a.m. The Valerie appointment. Where do I start? The coffee shop was packed on Tuesday afternoon. Computer-using students filled most tables at a nearby community college after classes. Valerie received a corner booth with high backs for privacy. She changed since our monthly family dinner 3 weeks ago. Her gorgeous hair was unkempt, and she wore no makeup. Valerie has always worn mascara and lipstick in my 5 years of knowing her. This is her routine, just like others need coffee to start the day. She stood and hugged me when I came, smelling like her lavender dryer sheets. Instead of a caramel with extra whipped cream, I requested a black coffee. It felt improper to order anything fun for this talk. After some awkward small talk, Valerie got to the point. Dominic broke down Sunday night and called her. She understood his concerns about commitment and becoming like his father, but Maria drove his behavior more immediately. I almost choked on coffee. Dominic's new project coordinator, Maria? What about the woman he mentioned briefly? Valerie hurriedly ripped a napkin into tiny pieces to explain Dominic's love for Maria over several months. Dominic told his mother there was no physical contact, but an emotional connection made him rethink our relationship. I sat there trying to understand this, feeling like the coffee shop was tilted. Creating a timeline in my head while Valerie spoke. Maria started working with Dominic around New Year's. I briefly met her at the March corporate holiday dinner. Dominic had already changed, he was more aloof, checked his phone more, and spent more time with coworkers. What I thought was more stress from his big task was more. When I asked Valerie why she was telling me this instead of protecting her son, she cried. As she explained, her marriage dissolution became clear. Before Dominic's father moved to Arizona with a coworker, there were months of alienation, harsh words, and staged disputes to create distance rather than face truth. She left me in the dark as Dominic took the coward's way out to avoid repeating the past. The bar comment became clear, not intoxicated folly, but a subconscious attempt to harm our connection so he didn't have to make the hard decision. We chatted for over an hour. Valerie recounted how she battled to save her marriage after finding the affair and blamed herself for not being enough. Before I parted in the parking lot, she said, "The hardest lesson I learned was that you can't make someone choose you. They either do or they don't, and anything in between is just delaying the inevitable." Afterwards, I stared at my phone in my car for a while. Dominic sent 3 more texts, all variations on "I'm sorry" and "I love you," but Maria was not mentioned, hinting that the truth was buried. I called Lena instead of responding and begged to stay at her flat. She did not hesitate or ask questions. She simply said she was setting up the pull-out couch and would pick up dinner on her way home. Everyone needs that kind of friend in a crisis. Finally, I wrote to Dominic. I know about Maria. Don't contact me again until you're ready to tell me the complete truth. I'll be collecting more of my things tomorrow while you're at work. I blocked his phone number for the night. I wanted time to think without his explanations. On her way to Lena's, Karina called. Valerie had overheard Dominic and Paul discussing the matter last Thursday. The chat confirmed and expanded on her information. She made her brother pledge to tell me the truth after the weekend. He had broken his promise. Karina's unwavering support amazed me most. Despite being Dominic's sister, she supported me. My relief was profound. I was worried about losing Dominic and his family, who had become like family to me. Lena's flat was perfect that night, a neutral space where I could exist without explanation. Dining on the living room floor. Her coffee table was covered in online class papers as we watched a baking competition we didn't understand. Its simple normalcy saved me during my emotional turmoil. I used my phone to relive 5 years of vacations, holidays, and everyday selfies with Dominic after Lena went to bed. Our engagement photos showed us smiling like lottery winners. I was mentally planning for the next day, going to the apartment while Dominic was at work, packing more stuff, possibly talking to the landlord about breaking our lease, when an unknown number texted me. Hi, Margot. This is Maria. I know you have blocked Dominic. Can we meet tomorrow? There's more to the story, which you should know. Only the two of us. My pulse raced as I glanced at the letter, wondering what else could be and why this woman would want to tell me directly. I scribbled a response after what seemed like an hour but was actually minutes. Where and when? Third update. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for their overwhelming support in my previous posts. Your comments have helped me through restless nights more than you realize. Yes, I'm alive. Sometimes are easier. My visit with Maria went differently than expected. Probably impartial, we met at a little brunch establishment near the park. She was nervously checking her phone when I arrived. She seemed less polished and more human than at the corporate party. Her ponytail was messy, and she wore little makeup. Her unease caught my attention immediately. Shouldn't she have been more confident if she got involved with my fiancé emotionally? She kept fiddling with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. The talk presented two major surprises. First, Maria didn't know Dominic liked her until Paul casually mentioned it last week. She said she and Dominic worked on a project together, occasionally texting after hours but never violating limits. According to her, she never flirted with him or promoted anything other than friendship. She showed me their work-related messaging history and the occasional meme, nothing romantic or inappropriate. She had a 3-year boyfriend who occasionally joined them for happy hours. The second insight affected Paul. He was apparently intentionally causing trouble. Maria overheard him at work encouraging Dominic to consider his options before settling down, calling her someone who gets Dominic better than I do. She explained that Paul had been telling everyone at work that Dominic was having second thoughts about the wedding, joking about him being trapped and missing out on his freedom. After our meeting, I felt unusually peaceful. Maria wasn't the monster I expected. She was a victim of Dominic's manipulation and frailty. Before leaving, she said, "You seem like someone who understands their worth. Don't let anyone make you doubt it." My perspective and tactics changed after the encounter. The focus shifted from Dominic and me to Paul's detrimental influence, Dominic's family, and my role in this. I emailed Karina later to organize a neutral family gathering at her place because I wasn't ready to be alone with Dominic. She agreed fast. I remember yesterday's lunch. Her small yet pleasant flat was organized by Karina. She ordered simple pasta and salad from the Italian restaurant near her building. Valerie arrived first, then Paul. He attended because Karina insisted, and Dominic, who looked exhausted, did too. First 20 minutes were terrible. We ate pasta at Karina's dining table, talking about the weather and her new coffee table. The elephant in the room was almost eating our meal, but no one wanted to confess it. Finally, Valerie broke the silence by reiterating that we were there to face what had happened and find a solution, not to socialize. That opened the floodgates. I told Paul all I learned from Maria, watching Paul's expression. The uncertainty and defensiveness in his face said it all. He tried to help his friend, but Karina cut him off immediately. Dominic sat calmly, staring at his unturned pasta. He confessed that Maria had been pleasant, but he had twisted it out of fear of becoming his father. Valerie recoiled at that comment. Dominic seemed embarrassed when I told the joke at the bar. He said it was his cowardice, not Maria. Paul was teasing him about being whipped, So he shouted something mean to appear cool. Dominic says my appearance never mattered. Paul dismissed it as guy talk, but Karina reminded everyone that Dominic and I were getting married in 3 months. That simple comment, a reminder of our fast approaching wedding, hit me hard. After sending save the dates and paying deposits, my dress was hanging in Lena's spare closet for final modifications. I subtly remarked that I no longer believed the wedding would happen. The room quieted. Dominic began to protest, but I stopped him. He stated he spent the week trying to figure out how we got here. I realized it wasn't simply Maria, that joke, or Paul's harm. Dominic was dishonest with me and himself. I said that I had ignored his lack of interest in wedding arrangements, his increased time with Paul, and his emotional isolation for months. I made excuses because it was easier than facing the truth, but I deserved someone who believed in me and didn't need a family intervention to figure out their feelings. Valerie and Karina said shut up when Paul made a snarky remark about my drama. Dominic said he loved me but was frightened of messing up. He already had, I said. We talked for hours. There were tears, yelling, especially between Karina and Paul, and hard truths. Old wounds reopened and new ones formed. When everyone was emotionally exhausted at midnight, we had to cancel the wedding. Our 5-year romance ended. Not a fight or a dramatic exit, just a sense that something fundamental had broken between us. Trust. It might be rebuilt someday, but not for an October wedding, not with Maria still working at Dominic's company, and not with that joke lingering. Karina brought me back to Lena's and said my relationship with her and Valerie hadn't altered. She stated I was still family despite Dominic's actions. After returning to Lena's apartment, I sat on the pull-out couch in the dark, realizing that 5 years had passed, the wedding had been canceled, and the future was unknown. Didn't cry right away. I made a list on my phone's notes app. Call the venue to cancel, the deposit is likely gone, return the ring, contact guests, relocate out of the apartment, change relationship status on social media. Past 2 a.m. Shuffled out of her bedroom, Lena. She heard me enter and checked on me. She sat beside me in the pull-out and threw her arm around my shoulders as I told her the wedding was off. We sat like that till daylight, not talking and just living in my new craziness. Dominic texted me this morning to meet to discuss the apartment lease, separating our accounts, and what to do with our shared furniture. So mature, so final. Elliot also asked when he could help me pack. My brother is always practical. My mother asked if she should cancel her flight to the wedding after hearing from one of my relatives who follows Karina on Instagram. My finger feels heavy with the ring. Twisting it unconsciously was a nervous habit I didn't realize. Nothing fancy, just a round diamond in white gold. Dominic chose it because it reflected our classic relationship. I called the venue this morning, ironically. The coordinator was kind but firm. The deposit is non-refundable so close to the date, $8,000 lost. Trips, new clothes, and outings have been cut for nearly a year. My cerebral half cringes at the waist, while my emotional side is indifferent about money. Karina texted me that she had found a photographer who might move our money to a future event. Valerie promised to tell relatives about the cancellation to avoid awkwardness. Small kindnesses afterward. Paul replied with a non-apologetic text stating things happen for a reason and I'd find someone better. I deleted it without replying. Maria wrote me a quick message apologizing and assuring me that nothing happened. Strangely, I trust her. Dominic's anxieties and Paul's manipulation seem to have made her collateral damage. Simple reminders like my wedding planning binder in my tote bag, our shared Spotify soundtrack for the celebration, and my laptop honeymoon research folder are the hardest. A lost future in small pieces. I went to work against Lena's advice to take a mental health day. Reddit browsing and overthinking appeared more distracting than answering phones and filling insurance claims at home. Coworkers have been surprisingly normal, either unaware or respectfully ignoring my puffy eyes and missing engagement ring. Tomorrow, Dominic and I will exchange keys and discuss the place at a coffee shop. Since my name is on the lease, he'll stay with his cousin until he leaves. Another practical discussion about leaving a relationship. Part of me doubts this. Last month, we debated reception music and tried different cakes. Separating kitchen appliances and disputing who keeps the PlayStation. Valerie stated at dinner, endings are rarely clean or perfect. Most of the time, they're messy, sad, and complicated. She should know. After Dominic's father left, she rebuilt her life, had 2 children, and found happiness. You wouldn't believe she'd been through so much looking at her now. Maybe there's hope. Now I'm taking things day by day. Tomorrow, I'll manage the flat and money. Next week, I'll start house hunting. The future after that is murky but real. Karina texted me to meet for coffee this weekend. She said her longtime family friend Kenzo had offered his holiday cabin if I needed a getaway to clear my thoughts. Dominic's family's unexpected help is much appreciated. Accepting Kenzo's offer is up in the air. Something inside me wants to process in peace. I understand I need Lena's realistic sympathy, Elliot's protective big brother energy, Valerie and Karina's complex allegiance right now. I'll stop using my wedding countdown app. Will not pin reception decorations or practice Dominic's surname signature. That future is over, but I'm hoping for something else. It's weird to write this final report from my new apartment. It's been 3 months since the family dinner that ended my engagement, 3 months of rebuilding my life in unexpected ways. Since several of you have requested an update, here it is. The good, the bad, and the unexpected. First, practicalities. After we broke up, Dominic left our shared flat within a week. Elliot and Lena helped me pack his possessions while he was at work, placing everything neatly labeled in the living room for him. It was strange to divide 5 years of shared existence into his and mine. The coffee maker he got for his birthday, the throw blanket I bought on our weekend trip to that small mountain town, and the framed photos we hung on every wall made the apartment feel hollow, like a stage set. After 2 more weeks, the leasing management let me out for a month's payment. To escape our relationship's ghost in every room was worth the money. Finding a new home was harder than planned. My single-person budget is tighter due to the bad rental market. My 1-bedroom apartment across town, farther from work, has a tiny balcony where I'm growing herbs in dollar store pots. The basil fades, but the mint grows. Against all odds, I saw that as symbolic. A financial adjustment. When planning for one, car insurance, streaming subscriptions, and even groceries become my responsibility. I now use coupons, buy store brands, use a spreadsheet, and think twice before ordering takeout. Growing up lessons I never thought I'd need at 29. Marriage merchants were surprisingly accommodating. The venue withheld our deposit but sent me a nice card wishing me happiness. The florist refunded half our payment despite their no refund policy. In a shocking but thoughtful move, the DJ suggested his rehab working brother. I keep the engagement ring in its box in my dresser. Dominic advised me to keep or sell it because returning it was bad karma. Not sure what to do with it. I sometimes forget it's there, and other times I open the box and stare at it, wondering how something so small could have had so much potential. Social media had its own horror. I waited 2 weeks to update my relationship status to avoid questions. I completed it at 2 a.m. On a Tuesday, well-meaning friends asked, "What happened?" Distant relatives prayed, and former classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly entered my direct conversations with phony fear that felt like interest. I wrote a brief, ambiguous comment about mutual decisions and requested privacy, then turned off notifications and threw my phone across the couch. Later, I posted a photo of my new apartment keys with the caption "New Beginnings." It got fewer likes than my engagement announcement, but it felt more authentic. Since the breakup, we've talked about practical issues like mail that arrived at the wrong place, the shared cloud storage account we forgot to separate, and returning a borrowed air fryer to his sister. Each conversation was polite but tense, like acquaintances forced to make small talk in an elevator. He still works for the same job, is friends with Paul, though Karina says they had a falling out recently, and Dominic contacted me last month and asked if we could meet. We hadn't seen each other since the key exchange at the apartment, and I was curious about his goals. We met in a coffee shop near my new apartment, as Lena half-jokingly suggested. He was leaner, had larger circles under his eyes, and wore a shirt I didn't recognize. After 10 minutes of stiff small talk about work and the weather, he took out a journal and said, "I've been seeing someone." And my heart stuttered before he said, "A therapist." The notebook was part of his therapy, daily reflections on patterns and habits he wanted to change. He'd been reflecting on his relationship with his father, his friendship with Paul, and how he treated me. He didn't ask for forgiveness or recon. "I should have done this years ago," he said. "Maybe things would have been different." He was the most self-aware I'd ever seen, and I hoped treatment would help him, not for my sake, that ship has sailed, but because carrying so much unresolved familial pain was exhausting. "I'm glad," he said. "They need good people in their lives." One of the oddest parts of this separation has been keeping in touch with Dominic's family. Valerie texts me weekly, usually with hilarious memes or garden updates. Karina and I get breakfast every other Sunday at this small cafe midway between our apartments. I'd like to think this tragedy has given me a profound awakening, allowing me to rediscover myself. Some days, I feel emancipated, relieved that I didn't marry someone who could harm me so carelessly. Other days, when my hot water heater breaks or I can't reach something on the high shelf Dominic would have retrieved for me, I miss the practical benefits of collaboration. I've also started therapy, not because of the breakup, but because it made me realize how much I compromised myself in that relationship, how many red flags I'd ignored because they were wrapped in familiarity, and how much of myself I'd sacrificed to accommodate Dominic's needs and insecurities. My therapist suggested I restore some of my lost self. Dating again seems far off, even though my coworkers have started suggesting I meet this great guy they know. I'm still learning how to be comfortable in my own company. The most unexpected resulted from canceling our honeymoon. We'd planned a 10-day trip to the coast and rented a little home with a veranda overlooking the water. Then Lena suggested something radical. Go on the trip alone. You've never traveled alone, she said. Maybe it's time. 10 days alone in a lovely home designed for two sounded like the start of a tragic indie film, but the more I thought about it, the more appealing it seemed. I could wake up whenever I wanted, explore without limits, and read a book in one sitting. So I'm going to a honeymoon cabin alone next week. I've packed 3 paperbacks, downloaded several podcasts, and bought a new bikini for comfort rather than appearance. My mother thinks I'm crazy. Elliot offered to come with me, but I declined. Karina suggested I use a dating app to see who's out there. Perhaps, but probably not. I went grocery shopping the other day when our song played over the store's speakers. 3 months ago, I would have hidden in the frozen food department, holding back tears. This time, I felt only a faint ache, like if I was pressing on a bruise that had mostly healed. Progress, not perfection. I'll be honest, my new apartment's shower has twin brothers' lies destroyed my life. My parents kicked me out, and now after years of neglect, they're asking for my money. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. Growing up, my twin brother and I had quite different treatment from our parents. For some reason, my parents were certain that my brother was destined for greatness, whereas I was labeled the black sheep since I was more interested in sports and making friends than in studying. They continually compared us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-esteem from an early age. As a child, I had to watch my brother have elaborate birthday parties for his pals, while I was treated as an afterthought. He frequently had sleepovers with his pals, whereas I was never allowed to bring my friends home. To be honest, I dreaded every moment of my youth. My grandma was the only person in the family who seemed to care about me. When she came, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few bucks to treat myself later. As the years went, this overt preference for my twin brother evolved into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly insult my academics and activities. No matter how hard I tried, I could never satisfy their expectations of being the ideal child. Although I excelled at athletics, they forbade me from participating in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to concentrate completely on my education, just like my brother. As a child, I felt frustrated and helpless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded again, this time for using Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong, but like all teenagers, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. However, my parents considered this as a major crime and a violation of trust because they had barred me from talking with my pals. They went crazy, flung all of my belongings around the room, ripped the doors from their hinges, and informed me I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents attack me in this way, my identical brother, rather than sticking up for me, made things worse. Our parents' wrongful acts produced a toxic environment, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. He developed a habit of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he'd easily transfer the blame onto me, and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me, happily accepted his falsehoods. He would insult me in front of my schoolmates and mock my attractiveness. Despite this, I had a large circle of friends at school because I was personable and willing to connect. My twin, on the other hand, suffered socially and disliked the fact that I could interact with others while he, as an introvert, felt uncomfortable. This jealousy boiled over during our 14th birthday party, when none of his buddies came up. I'm not sure why they did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends treated me to ice cream, and I had a fantastic day. This irritated my brother even more. To get retribution, my brother started spreading false tales about me at school, depicting me as a spoiled brat. He falsely accused me of physically assaulting him at home since our parents loved him more. He escalated the situation without my knowledge. To fake proof, he would punch himself, causing injuries such as a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would boldly stroll into school, exhibiting his self-inflicted injuries as proof of my alleged assault and fabricating stories. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, claiming that they were the result of innocent activities such as playing football with friends. The lies and his supposed black eyes gained traction, and many began to believe his twisted account of events. It didn't take long for whispers to spread, and my friends began to look at me suspiciously. At first, I noticed minor changes. Friends who used to converse with me in the halls seemed distant, and invites to group hangouts grew fewer and farther between. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and people were unwilling to engage with the allegedly pampered girl charged with violence. One day, I got the confidence to ask my ex-best friend what had happened between us. She said that my twin brother had been circulating falsehoods about me. She disclosed the specifics of the lies he had told everyone, accusing me of actions I had never committed. I was stunned to hear her remarks. The emotion was a combination of incredulity and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, whom I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. It was a betrayal that struck deep, leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a sorrowful heart. I addressed my brother the following day at school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he smirked and said I deserved to die alone. I was at a loss for words since his lies and actions were beginning to frighten me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was frightened they would believe my brother instead of me. Isolation stung, especially since I had always been open to establishing friends. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies seemed to be breaking apart the bonds I'd made over the years. The rumors spread among teachers as well. It was a weird sensation, as if I were living in a parallel realm where my genuine self was obscured by the wicked fiction told by my own twin. The lies had progressed beyond typical teenage chatter. They were now influencing how others regarded me. The unpleasant whispers swiftly reached my principal's ears, and my worst nightmare became reality. The principal summoned me and my brother, along with our parents, to his office to discuss the purported rumors. I sat there, my heart racing, as the principal demanded the truth. I believed my brother would finally come clean, but he doubled down on his lies. He told the principal that the reports were real and depicted me as a bully who beat him up when our parents were not around. I could not believe it. Shock rushed over me as my brother continued to tell this twisted story about how I was furious at him for receiving more attention from our parents. He held to his story like a glue, despite the fact that it was all lies. After hearing my brother's story, my mother burst into tears and clutched him like he was a hero. My father tried to console my brother, assuring him that it was brave of him to speak up and that he would ensure that nothing bad happened to him. Following that day, I attempted to defend myself, arguing with the principal that everything was fabricated. I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to get to the top, but my brother persisted, saying that I was this furious, violent person who took out my emotions on him every day. My mother's tears flowed as she grabbed onto my brother and gave me accusing stares. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's fabricated story. My principal sharply chastised me, stating that the school did not accept bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't simply let it go. I implored him, tears flowing down my cheeks, attempting to explain that I hadn't done anything to my brother. The principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would not bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I began crying even more, virtually asking him to reconsider. My parents, outraged and embarrassed by the incident, hauled me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to argue my case and make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, my heart full of frustration and embarrassment. When we came home, things changed drastically. My father started packing my belongings out of the blue. I was stunned, perplexed, and had no idea what was going on. My mother asked him what he was doing, but he simply yelled that he couldn't allow me live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, virtually on my knees, and begged my brother to give them the truth, but he remained cool, unmoved by my feelings. My father kept packing my belongings before throwing the bag into our foyer. I clung to my father's legs, asking him not to kick me away. It felt as if a nightmare were happening. He informed me that a bully like me did not deserve to reside in his home and that he would call his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wished. It felt as if the world had collapsed beneath me. I stood there in amazement, surrounded by my stuff scattered over the foyer, booted out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother showed up. She helped me grab all of my belongings and load them into the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I was wearing my seatbelt before strolling towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my father opened it, she began yelling at him for treating me this way. With firm determination, she informed him that if he ever approached or attempted to contact me again, she would not hesitate to call the police or CPS, because what he had done to a youngster like me might land him in jail. My mother attempted to shift blame by telling her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother was having none of it. She stood firm, defending me and emphasized that I was only a child and did not deserve to be treated in such a harsh manner. That was the first time I realized how powerful my grandmother was. She did not cower before my parents, and unlike them, she trusted me. We eventually drove away, leaving behind my house, the only place I had ever grown up. I can't even begin to describe how excruciatingly painful I felt at the time. I recall crying on the bed and refusing to eat anything, despite my grandmother's insistence. When I informed her what my brother had done, she was astonished as well. She told me that she trusted my version of the story, and I was relieved that I had at least one person on my side. When the 10-day suspension was removed, returning to school was like going back into the lion's lair. As I entered the familiar hallways, my classmates' expressions told volumes. Judgment, murmurs, and sidelong stares. The weight of the bogus charges remained in the air. Meanwhile, my brother shamelessly ignored me and like I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few people who believed his version of the tale and saw him as the victim of my attacks. I tried to tell everyone my side of the tale, but it went unheard. I was an outsider, saddled with an unfair reputation that stuck to me like a shadow. No matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, or the corridors, the eyes that met mine were filled with contempt and suspicion. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all of my lessons, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then return home. I didn't have any friends, and it seemed like no one wanted me there. Throughout this, my parents never called to check on me. My grandmother would continuously remind me that this was not my fault and that things would eventually be fine. I graduated from high school with good grades and was looking forward to attending college, where I hoped to have a better life. It wasn't until I went away to college that I discovered what freedom felt like. For the first time, no one was looking over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to compete with me. I met and became friends with folks who shared my interests. Despite the mental and physical scars left by my family and classmates over the years, I focused on putting it all behind me and making the most of my college experience. During this period, I realized I had an aptitude for content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would work out in the long run. As a result, I chose to give up on my dream. However, in order to supplement my income, I began working as a freelance writer. I signed up for several freelancing websites, which helped me get tasks from well-known companies. This is how I progressively began to compile a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained my side hustle and never asked my parents for a penny. When I finished college, instead of taking a corporate job, I realized I could work full-time as a content writer. I was doing well since I had numerous clients and long-term professional ties with them, allowing me to work on multiple projects. Having a respectable freelancing business not only gave me financial independence, but it also enabled me to explore the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even if it was not easy. I saved as much money as I could and took a gamble on myself. I've seen a lot of the world over the years, but there's always so much more to see. My grandma was the only person I considered family throughout all of this, and I cherished her. She was quite unhappy when I moved out, but she knew that I needed to be self-sufficient. Despite my tight schedule, I made it a point to be available for her whenever possible. On weekends, I would pay Mom a visit, frequently eating meals or simply sitting on the porch, absorbed in chats about everything from childhood memories to current events. On weekends, I would spend full days assisting her with household tasks or taking her to the neighboring park for a leisurely walk. I recently completed one of the most important assignments of my career. While I can't reveal the name, I was extraordinarily fortunate to write articles and product descriptions for them. After the job was completed, I asked the team I worked with to submit great evaluations on my websites, which they were delighted to do. I grabbed screenshots of several of their evaluations and shared them on Instagram, understanding that collaborating with this brand was a big deal. As expected, several other content writers congratulated me on my professional accomplishments, and some even reprinted my article to help get the word out. This is how I began receiving messages from strangers who also wanted assistance with their websites. My family observed this as well, and some contacted me to express their congratulations. My college's principal eventually called me, seeing that I was doing well and inviting me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about starting a career as a content writer. I was apprehensive because I'm not good at public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and consented. When I found myself standing in front of expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt as if my life had gone full circle. In my speech, I discussed my hardships and how I pushed hard to keep going despite the difficult times. It was a truly rewarding experience to encourage others and contribute to the growth of the writing community. Some of my videos went viral on Facebook as people connected with them. It felt fantastic to be finally recognized for my efforts. Last week, I was asked to talk on a local news program. It was a show about the benefits of content creation, and they asked me to share my experiences and insights with their audience. I was nervous, but yet excited about the prospect. During the event, I discussed my experiences, the value of customer feedback, and how a simple appreciation message may lead to fantastic opportunities. The opportunity to reach a larger audience and encourage more professionals in the area was both humbling and exciting. When it finally aired, I uploaded some of these snippets on Instagram since I was honored to be invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins first learned about my professional accomplishments. Because my parents never mentioned me to anyone, they had no idea I was working with well-known brands and appearing on television shows. This is how word swiftly went among my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears, because just a few days later, I was working on another project while keeping my phone on mute. When I finished my work, I checked my phone and was surprised to find 6 missed calls from my mother. I was astonished to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she had phoned me. After so many years of stillness, I couldn't understand why she was phoning. I hesitantly called her back, and she answered right away. I asked her if everything was fine, and my mother began to congratulate me. My father, who was most likely sitting directly next to her, also joined in on the chat. He began to probe about my life and well-being, and I responded without much thinking. It didn't strike me as weird until they asked how much I was making these days. I explained that it was none of their business. My father answered, "We're family, so don't be shy about telling us your income." I assured him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mother proceeded to describe how difficult their life was these days, and my brow furrowed in suspicion. Basically, this is how our talk went. "Mom, we're retired now, and we've wanted to renovate the house for a while. It's not in great shape, but we don't have any funds left." Me, "Okay." Mom said, "Your achievement has given us hope. We saw your TV interview today and thought you might be able to assist us out by paying for the improvements. Dad, after all, we are a family. Please do not hesitate to share some of your revenue with us. We genuinely need your help." Me, "Are you kidding me? Why are you asking for money when you haven't even spoken to me in years? I'm not sure what prompted you to contact me, and while I appreciate your congratulations, I won't be able to assist you." Hearing this, my mother began telling me that I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My father emphasized that as my parents, they deserved to be cared for, and that this was the least I could do. I was so angry at this point that I wanted to tell them off. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of simply disagreeing with them, I would teach them a lesson once and for all for thinking they could mooch off of me. After my parents mistreated me for so many years, I told them that I was willing to help them provided they agreed to my demands. My father was curious and asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I made my demand. If they wanted my assistance, they had to openly confess, in front of our family and friends, that my brother was the mastermind behind the false stories that had harmed my reputation. I wanted them to embarrass my brother in front of everyone, just like they had humiliated me by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to accept responsibility for their acts and recognize the anguish they had caused. Hearing about my untenable state, my father began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mother told me that this was all unnecessary and that we could have a private discussion without engaging others, but I stood firm. This was a non-negotiable requirement for any further aid they wanted me to provide. As the tension rose, my father raised his voice, establishing his authority as my father, and began to underline that it was my responsibility to assist my family in need. My mother, in a last-ditch effort, persuaded me to do the right thing and assist them, citing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden attractiveness. I reminded them of the past, that they had kicked me out, and that my grandmother, not them, had reared me. They became increasingly angry, but I told them unequivocally that if they wanted to approach me and request financial aid, the truth had to be acknowledged publicly, and my brother had to face the consequences of his conduct. Since this talk, my parents have been calling me often, but I'm ignoring them. I'm beginning to regret even phoning them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd be a complete idiot if I didn't aid my parents. Update. It's been a crazy week since I last shared my story, and the outpouring of support and encouragement has been astounding. It's encouraging to know that I'm not alone at this moment. I'm happy everyone believes that I shouldn't interact with my parents or even contemplate assisting them after everything they've put me through. I gave them such a requirement since I knew they would be unable to comply. I know they love my brother too much, and even if they've realized by now that it was all his lies, I know they'll never put him through what they did to me. My brother sent me a nasty text message today after my parents tried to call me again and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. Hey sis, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I can tell you that every day without you has been wonderful. I heard mom and dad contacted you and you offered them a strange ultimatum. You're aware that they will never go through with it, right? They plainly never loved you and will never hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time, so stop being so self-centered and attempt to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless, so why not help them out by paying for their home repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and become a better daughter. Seeing the message felt like a stab in the chest. The hubris to reject the difficulties I had encountered and the conditions I had established revealed his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my single and childless situation added an extra degree of insensitivity. His idea that I should prioritize their needs over my own was not only disrespectful, but also demonstrated how little he valued me. Fueled by dissatisfaction and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives, detailing the traumatic events of my upbringing and the unfair treatment I had received while growing up in my family home. In the email, I highlighted the tight and restrictive environment I encountered at home, as well as how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. I also looked into the spiteful and utterly false rumor my brother had circulated about me at school, which had resulted in serious consequences and ruined my image. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out and if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I could have died on the streets by now. Toward the conclusion, I requested that everyone read a message my brother had sent me. I've enclosed a screenshot in which he acknowledged lying about me. It was a simple confession, and I hoped it would reveal the lies that had lasted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know what will happen when my parents and brother see it. Next, I'll let you know how my family reacts to my email. Update. It's been a month since my previous update, and a lot has happened. As you may guess, my family erupted when they received the email. My parents have faced criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of their favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members contacted me, saying they had no idea about everything and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and dad sent me a bombardment of text messages that became increasingly hostile and aggressive. So I contacted a lawyer, who issued them a cease and desist notice. It basically told them not to approach me again, and if they did, they would face severe legal penalties. I guess this spooked them since they stopped calling me. My grandmother believes I did the right thing by telling everyone what occurred, and she fully supports me. She is the only person who is important to me. Therefore, I'm delighted she has my back. Update. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I'm pleased to say that everything is going well in my life right now. Professionally, my article writing business has thrived. Invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts continue to come in, confirming my status as a renowned expert in my field. I'm as close to my granny as ever. I recently took a 1-week sabbatical from work to spend quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and has taught me a lot about the many flowers and herbs in her yard. My favorite and most cherished memories are of spending time with her, whether we were sharing meals, having profound conversations, or simply enjoying one another's company. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm glad they're staying away. Personally, I've started attending to therapy in the hopes of working on my own recovery. For the time being, I believe this is the final update. Thank you very much for your support. After discovering my husband's affair with my best friend, I face loss, divorce, and find new love in a lifelong friendship. Original post, June 5, 2023. OOP and her husband had been together since she was 19 and he was 22. Married for 6 years now with 2 kids, third baby on the way. She found out her dad has cancer. Her mother passed away when she was 12. OOP's husband has been very supportive from day one and suggested that she step away from her job for a while to take care of her family. OOP has her best friend who she knew since they were babies. Both families grew up together. After going to wake her husband up, she discovered her friend's text messages to him from his phone. Realizing it has been going on for 4 months when OOP's husband and her best friend have been lying to her. She tries to figure out what to do next that she knows now about the affair. Update 1. June 5, 2023. Same day, 14 hours later. OOP spent a good amount of time gathering and documenting everything she has on her husband and her best friend. Used her dad's hospice care plan as a front cover so her husband doesn't know she knew about his infidelity. She is thinking about going back to work, but working with a lawyer first to get things in order should she move forward with the next steps of her life. Per her lawyer, OOP doesn't have to worry about her inheritance from her parents, which her husband cannot touch at all. While her husband was at work, OOP revealed what took place between her husband and best friend to their mothers, who are now upset about the whole incident. Met with the lawyer, OOP gets her finances, logistics, and everything in order to make sure she is in a good position to go after her husband and best friend. Update 2. June 6, 2023, one day later. OOP names the characters in the posts. MIL and File, Ruth and Joe. EXBFF's parents, Angie and Bob. XBFF, Jess/STBX, Tyler. XBFF's brother, Jake. OOP's dad. Dad. OOP provides a quick summary on how things went so quickly in the last couple posts. She was able to meet with her OBGYN on the same day to get checked, all clear. Several more tests were done and waiting for the results to arrive. OOP met with her lawyer to go over everything, including her husband's financial records, which she got a hold of to make sure her bases are covered. If everything goes well with what she got, OOP should not have any problems with getting the divorce papers within a month. Ruth and Angie, MIL and ex-BFF's mothers, told OOP what happened after both sets of parents confronted Tyler, EX, and Jess, EX-BFF. All four parents are very upset with both Tyler and Jess for the affair, and they have been cut off from their families. Tyler discovers OOP has moved her stuff and their children's stuff to her dad's to get away. Damaged the house and went to look for OOP. She left for her dad's cabin with her kids, now away and safe. Tyler is arrested after trying to break into OOP's dad's house, not cabin. OOP had to get her own therapy session and will set up therapy sessions for her children. Per her lawyer, OOP is collecting text messages from Jess, who told her to fix everything, especially her parents cutting her off. Blamed OOP for stealing Tyler from her. Tyler wanted to reconcile, but OOP isn't giving in. He doesn't know about the divorce papers yet until he is served. OOP suspected Tyler and Jess won't be staying together since their parents have confronted them. Jess's brother Jake is on leave from the military. He steps in to help OOP and her family, per Angie and Bob. OOP thanks Redditors for continuing support as she deals with the whole situation on Tyler and Jess. Update 3. June 12, 2023, 6 days later. Tyler finds OOP's post and asks if she is serving him the divorce papers. OOP said yes. He begs for forgiveness for his behavior toward her. OOP has regular meetings with her lawyer to make sure she has everything as needed. Jake is doing great, being a great support system for OOP and her children. OOP's dad is not doing well, now in the hospital for a while. Kids are adjusting well, along with therapy already set up to cope with unexpected events in their lives after moving away from Tyler. Still pregnant for a couple more months. Update 4. July 23, 2023, 1 month later. OOP's dad has died. Her marriage ended in dissolution after Tyler was served with the papers. Per her lawyer, the dissolution process was quick and smoothly after Tyler gave OOP everything she asked for in the divorce papers. OOP has full custody of the kids with visitations for Tyler. Therapy is going on for OOP and her kids. Still pregnant, but the baby is doing well. OOP's ex-MIL, Ruth, and ex-BFF's mom Angie are helping her with the kids. All three women are on great terms with each other. Jake has gone back to his active duties but will be back to help OOP and her children. Their friendship is great and might be moving on to the next step, but Jake and OOP are taking things slowly. Tyler and Jess are no longer together. He has left Jess, who has been blacklisted from her family after the blow-up. Update 5, in comments. August 23, 2023, 1 month later. OOP is back with a small update. Her baby boy was born slightly prematurely, but he didn't have to do a NICU stay. Angie, ex-BFF's mom, was present at the birth while Ruth, MIL, stayed with the older children. Both Ruth and Angie took turns staying with OOP for several weeks to assist with the baby and his siblings. OOP is very glad to have support from both mothers. Sadly, the baby doesn't get a chance to get to know his grandpa, OOP's dad, who passed on a few weeks before. Jake is in the process of moving back home after receiving some news on a change in his military career. He has been offered an early retirement, which was not his fault at his base. OOP stated Jake is looking for a place but might stay with her and her children temporarily until he has a place to live in. Tyler, EX, was upset because he wasn't allowed in the room when OOP gave birth. OOP will give more updates on her ex when things calm down. Update 6, October 14, 2023, 2.5 months later. OOP answers prior questions regarding Tyler before giving the latest update. MIL is no contact while FIL is low contact with Tyler when he has supervised visits with the kids. He has cheated on OOP with another girl besides Jess. OOP is not worried about Jess having a sibling relationship with Jake, brother, because they didn't have a great relationship growing up. Jake had been in low contact with Jess prior to the blow-up and has remained the same since then. OOP's oldest child understands the situation with Tyler. Both kids are in therapy per OOP in order to have healthy coping methods with their dad being out. OOP doesn't want to accept any donations from strangers to help out. She has her inheritance from her dad who has passed on. OOP gave a great update on her baby boy who has been reaching all milestones despite the fact being born slightly prematurely. Her oldest children are in love with their baby brother. Angie and Bob, Jess's parents, have been called grandparents, being there for OOP and her children. Tyler wasn't at the birth but has blown up at OOP for not letting him see his child. Per OOP's requests at the hospital where she works as an RN, Tyler was escorted off the property for OOP's own safety. Since then Tyler hasn't paid any visits to see his children. Turned out he has gotten a new girlfriend and now wasn't interested in seeing his kids after FIL paid a visit to check in with Tyler. OOP has been keeping in touch with Jake who has been very thoughtful of OOP. Had some food delivered to OOP and catching up. Jake also checked in with OOP's children to make sure they are well. Respected OOP's boundaries. He will be coming home in the next few months to take care of personal business including house hunting. OOP is looking forward to having Jake's visits. What about OOP herself? Therapy has been helpful since she started. Sad about her father's passing. Shared how her relationship with her dad was great. Glad to have Angie and Ruth in her corner along with a large support system. OOP is sad for her children because they don't have their dad in their lives now after Tyler has bailed out on them once he had a new girlfriend. OOP is preparing to head back to work and find a new normal for herself and her children. Ready for a new chapter to start. Update 7, December 25, 2023, 2 months later. OOP shared a short update. She received a surprise for Christmas when Jake came home to visit her and her children. The older children have stated Santa has brought Uncle Jake home. Update 8. February 9, 2024, 1.5 months later. OOP shared some news since the last few updates. Tyler hasn't seen the kids since he started dating his girlfriend. Stopped talked with FIL who was the middleman for OOP and Tyler for their children's visits. OOP has offered alternative ways of communication for their children's sake. Tyler turned them down because he chose his girlfriend over his children who haven't seen for a while. OOP has figured she was going to be a single mom after Tyler bailed out. Ruth and Angie have provided childcare while OOP adjusts to her work schedule. Very glad to come home to happy children, a clean home, and dinner on the stove. Briefly, OOP was asked if she's religious. She has stated she's not judging people and has encouraged people to be themselves for who they are. OOP shared that she's dating Jake currently. Stating the air quotes because Jake and OOP are taking things slowly. OOP received her first kiss. Went out on several dates here and there, but also included kids for movie nights at home. Things are going well for both. Jake and OOP might enter the boyfriend and girlfriend phase. Jake has been very supportive, helping OOP with her kids including the baby boy. Jake has been very respectful of OOP's boundaries which makes OOP so glad she has someone who understands her. OOP shared she wanted to wait and receive Jake's stamp of approval on what she shares with the Reddit community. Update 9, May 24, 2024, 3 months later. It has been almost a year since OOP first discovered her ex-husband's affair. OOP shared a quick update on some Redditors who saw Jake's comment on OOP's Reddit account being locked out. Turned out it was Jess who changed the password. OOP explained from the beginning how she found Jess walking into her house while Jake was outside in the backyard with the kids. Jess has tried to make threats against OOP while in the kitchen. Jake managed to get inside after hearing OOP's screams. He got Jess out of the house before the police were called. Jess made up a story to the police and accused OOP for threatening her. It backfired at Jess as OOP had cameras everywhere and showed the police the evidence. Jess was escorted off the property. That was when Jess hacked into OOP's social media accounts including Reddit, but OOP managed to stop Jess from accessing Reddit. Jess later spammed OOP's job, resulting in a week's suspension. OOP was cleared after the evidence showed OOP was telling the truth and Jess was falsifying everything. What led OOP to get a restraining order against Jess was when she tried to pick up OOP's oldest son from school without anyone knowing about it. The school was well aware after meeting with OOP regarding Tyler being violent in front of the kids prior. They escorted Jess off the school campus and kept OOP's oldest safe until OOP came for the pickup. OOP has an emergency order in place, but will be at the court to request for a permanent one within the next month or so. Locks were changed immediately after the incident with Jess and the police. Angie and Bob are very angry with their daughter for what happened. There is no update on Tyler. OOP shares that she hasn't heard from him since he last bailed out on the visitations with their children. OOP realized her oldest has wanted Jake to be the dad instead of Tyler. She knew the kids were moving forward and accepting the fact of Tyler not being in their lives anymore. OOP learns from Ruth and Joe, Tyler's parents, that Tyler has remarried and is expecting a baby with his new wife. Ruth told OOP she and Phil got invitations from Tyler and his wife. That is how OOP learned about Tyler. OOP's 2 children are still in therapy and was informed her oldest is ready to call Jake dad instead of Tyler. Her middle child seems to move on and forget who Tyler was since both children have been bonding well with Jake. Now on to Jake. OOP realized she has been feeling so much happier now when Jake has been around and creating a healthy relationship. It is a blessing for OOP to have Jake there because he checks in regularly when he is at work or anywhere away from OOP and her kids. It showed OOP Jake cares about her and her family. Jake told OOP she is his girlfriend practically the whole time. Update 10. June 26, 2024. 1 month later. OOP is back with a new update. This time, it's on the restraining order she has against Jess. OOP wasn't approved for a permanent one, but did receive a 7-year restraining order. Where she is located, it appears to be very difficult to obtain a permanent restraining order without any additional and hard evidence that could result in a life or death situation. If Jess resumes her harassment onto OOP after 7 years are up, OOP can take her back to the courts for another restraining order. OOP requests no more questions regarding Jess as she is ready to move on after she has the restraining order in place. OOP made an additional comment to confirm her children are also included in the restraining order against Jess, so all good. Per OOP, Jake is doing great, and has moved in with OOP and her children. They are all thrilled with the next step, OOP again stating the fact she has known Jake all her life so she's not worried. There's nothing new with Tyler since he has made no contacts with his children. The children are doing well. Part 1 of 2 updates. September 10, 2024. If you are triggered by mentions of death and drug use, you should probably skip this update. I will be making an entirely different post for the life updates so you won't miss anything. Please take care of your mental health first. Hey guys, I have some news. I'm not entirely sure on how to say it, so I'm just going to say it. Jess was found deceased in her apartment from a drug overdose at the end of July. To say it was a shock would be an understatement of the century. Jess was the kind of girl who never touched a drug in her life. Even back in the day when I would partake in smoking weed from time to time, she would pick a fight with me about it. A part of me is devastated. She was my best friend and we went through so much together, we had so much history. She wrote me a letter. I'm not going to go into every single detail about it, but I will highlight one main part of it. She told me she saw I was trapped in an unhappy, loveless marriage and she wanted to help me get out of it. She didn't know what to do. So one night when she started doing drugs, she decided to get rid of Tyler. The only way she knew how was by sleeping with him. From there things spiraled and she fell in love with him and became jealous because he would fill her head with pretty white lies and then go home to me. While I don't forgive her for what she did to me, I get it. I do. Jake has been blaming himself of sorts. Yes, he was pissed at her, but he didn't want her dead. None of us did. He's been having a hard time with things, but in true Jake fashion, he's been shoving his grief to the side to be there for everyone else. He stayed with his parents the first month after everything happened to take care of them, and then would come check on me at least twice a day. He still won't really talk about it, so I try to be there for him in every way possible without the use of words. Angie isn't doing well. She lost a child, and even though she cut her off, that's still her daughter and she still loves her. I've been stopping by their house once a day to check on her and bring her meals to ensure everyone is eating. Jake's dad. Well, he's been handling it much better than I thought. Jess was always closer to him, but he told me, maybe I'm a heartless bastard, but once I saw the woman she was becoming, I stopped thinking of her as my daughter. I already grieved the loss of my daughter a long time ago. So there's that. Just to put it out there, Nobody is blaming me. They made the choice to cut Jess out of their life of their own free will, and I made it clear to them when all of this first came out that I wouldn't blame them if they wanted to keep their relationship with their daughter-sister. Angie even made it a point to tell me it's not my fault, and we hugged and cried together. We're not sure if she did it on purpose or if she had letters for everyone as a backup in case she happened to overdose, but the letters weren't out in the open by her body. They were tucked away in a drawer. To end this update, I just want to make it clear that though I had a lot of hate in my heart for Jess, there was also a lot of love there too. She hurt me and betrayed me, but had she not done that I would still be stuck married to a man I felt indifference towards and would not be as happy as I am. She did it in a fucked up way, but in a sense she did free me from my shackles. I will always love her, and this loss is one that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Relevant comments. OOP on how Jess's parents and brother, Angie and Bob, and Jake are taking the news of her death. OP. Angie and her husband are in grief counseling, but it's not something Jake is interested in. I did try to push him on it, but he said he'd rather deal with the loss in his own way. I've been respecting that choice, but I do bring it up to him from time to time to ensure no one will think any less of him if he needs help processing. I did manage to get him to attend one of my therapy sessions with me about the grief, and he did get some things off his chest, but he'd rather handle his grief quietly, so I haven't been too overbearing about it. What has OOP know so far about Jess getting into drugs? OOP, personally, I don't think Jess started doing drugs until after the affair was discovered. I think that's what triggered her into finding this new escape. I'd like to believe I would have noticed something that big, but I was also so wrapped in grief over losing my only remaining parent that maybe I did miss some signs. I know without a doubt I would have noticed if she was high around me though, so if it was pre-discovery she didn't do them around me or hang out with me if she was high. OOP on if Tyler has known what happened or not. OOP, if Tyler knows, he didn't say anything to me about it. I also didn't reach out to him and freely offer the information. I really hate to say this, but her obsession with Tyler ran much deeper than I initially realized. I thought it was just a fling, but after going through her apartment and helping Angie and Jake clear it out, I realized that what she felt for him was really walking the line of obsession. There's a part of me that feels like this was her cry to him, to see if he would run back to her and rescue her from herself. OOP's thoughts on if Jess had always wanted what OOP had. Being jealous of OOP and her life. OOP. I think you're pretty close, and this is me making an educational guess because only Jess truly knows, but I like to think I know her well enough to answer this. Had Jess and I fallen out any other way, her parents wouldn't have cut me off unless I did to her what she did to me. They would have distanced from me, and helped Jess through it. This is the first time they made this decision. We've had our fair share of arguments and her parents would take her side, even if she was wrong. Jess was very close to her dad, and while he was like a dad to me as well, we didn't really have that father-daughter bond. Angie always looked after me because my mom was her best friend, and she did mother-daughter things with me since I lost mine so young. But she did more with her own daughter than me, which I never felt ill will towards. Jess and Angie were also close, and Angie always made sure Jess never felt unloved or left out. And Jess even made comments over the years that she was glad that her mom stepped in for me, but never overstepped. They had countless talks about it to the point Jess would come to me and joke about it, saying, "Mom's having one of her moments where she wants to make sure I'm not jealous or upset that she did this and this with you, LOL. Her and Jake were never close growing up. More so because all of Jess's friends used her to get closer to Jake, though I'm the first friend of Jess's that Jake actually made a move on. He would ignore the friends and Jess would blame him for it. I'm going to try to word this as gently as possible without trying to sound like a complete asshole. Jess was always boy crazy, the girl who was constantly vying for a man's attention. While I don't think there's anything wrong with that, there is something wrong in how Jess went about it. She saw men as a way to prove her worth. However, teenage boys and even men can be pretty shallow, and the men Jess typically went after were pretty shallow. Jess was always bigger. I wouldn't say she was full out fat, but she had a belly and hips, and I didn't stay over 100 pounds until I had my first child, and even then I was still skinny. So of course, these shallow-ass men, when they saw her and I together, they would divert their attention to me instead of her. I of course always ignored them, but I think that had set a deep-rooted insecurity in her, that she was always second best to me when it came to men. I never saw it that way, and I never went after the men she liked. I married Tyler, and shortly after I married Tyler, Jess got married to the guy I had a crush on in high school. I truthfully didn't care because it was an innocent crush and I never acted on it, but the guy was an ass and in his wedding speech made a comment about how he got second best to what he really wanted, and everyone hated the guy. All of us begged her to not marry him once he showed his true colors long before that wedding speech. But she saw it as me being jealous and we actually stopped talking for a while because of it. So I think getting my husband to sleep with her was her way of proving she wasn't second best. Only when my husband didn't pursue a relationship with her like she hoped, she became obsessed with the idea of him and trying to prove she was the better lover. I don't know what the end goal was truthfully, but I just hope she's at peace now. Part 2 of 2. Updates, September 10th, 2024, same day, 1 hour later. Hey guys, I know the last post was heavy, so if you need someone to talk to please feel free to reach out. I understand stuff like that leaves its mark. Here's to a more cheerful update. Tyler is still MIA from the kid's life. Still hasn't reached out, and I'm not chasing after him to be involved with the kids. They deserve more from their dad. The kids are doing just wonderful. They've really taken to Jake, even the baby calls him Dada, and once he and I had a long talk about it, I've decided that if the kids want to call him Dad I won't intervene. My oldest made the transition from Uncle Jake to Dad. My middle child still calls him Uncle Jake, but that's completely fine with me. How they want to pursue that relationship I will let them. Jake actually started coaching their indoor soccer league and they love having him there. The house just has this sense of peace now, and all of them are just so happy that it makes my heart so full. I did have a conversation with them about Aunt Jess being in heaven with Papa and they took it well, probably because they've hardly seen her in the last year. Tyler's parents have still been just as involved and are actually really close to Jake's parents. They've all been so wonderful that sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. Angie, and I think the fake name I assigned Angie's husband was Bob, please bear with me if I'm wrong. Bob has retreated a little from the kids' life to deal with their grief, which I completely understand. They do still see the kids at least once a week and Angie mentioned it helps her, spending time with them. Roughly 2 weeks after Jess passed away, Jake asked me to marry him. I told him I wasn't saying no, but I wanted him to sit with this a little longer and make sure this was something he actually wanted and he wasn't making a hasty decision in the midst of grief. A month later, after the dust had started to settle and things were slowly falling back into our routines, he asked me again. He had this whole speech about how he's wanted this for as long as he could remember and even mentioned how when we were kids he said he would marry me when we grew up. It's true he did say that to me when I was like 5 LOL, so I said yes. We are having a long engagement. I don't want to jump right back into a marriage, so we're taking our time and haven't even started wedding planning yet. Maybe come 2025 we'll start the plans. To be totally honest though, we've just been debating on an elopement, something small with just his parents and the kids. Who knows though, we have time to figure it out. Life has been a whirlwind full of ups and downs, but I'm so lucky to have so many wonderful people who love me and my kids. As always, thank you for being here with me throughout this journey. I love you guys. Until next time. Relevant comments. OOP on how Angie and Bob are taking the news of her engagement. OOP, Angie is very thrilled. She's actually been doing some wedding planning, and I've been letting her do her own thing. I think it's helping keep her busy. When we told Angie and Bob, Angie actually started crying. She said that her and my mom used to joke about us growing up and getting married and they were thrilled about the idea of them becoming actually related by marriage. Bob is happy because he knows Jake is a good man who would, in his words, take care of you and the kids, and if he did anything to hurt me all I needed to do was call him and he'd put the fear of God in Jake LOL. I threatened to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't become independent by getting real jobs. Am I the asshole for being too harsh? Hi Reddit. I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have 2 adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy, and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, but she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable, and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this route. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, they had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, but I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, we remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She's started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, they're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, but there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, and I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care, Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers. I've worked hard for 17 years to support my family, only to discover my wife's betrayal and that some of my kids aren't mine. Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep this short. Both in our 30s and have been together 17 years. I male 30s and am the sole provider for my family of 6, partner and 4 kids. 2 high-energy dogs. I work 5 days a week and sometimes work on weekends if we need a little more cash. My partner is a SHM and hasn't worked since our eldest was born, by her own choice. I wake up at 5 a.m. and take the dogs out. Prepare kids' lunches, snacks, ensure all school essentials such as bags etc. are at the front door, then head to work in a physically demanding job. Kids are picked up for daycare, school at 7. Due to after-school activities and clubs etc. they're not home until 6. I come home at 7 and make dinner most nights. Help with homework, do bath time for the little ones, do dishes, take dogs out for a longer walk again, put little ones in bed if the house is a mess. I will of course clean it. I pay for everything: mortgage, bills, insurance, groceries, clothes, toys, technology, after-school activities, dates, a woman to deep clean the house once a month. My partner wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends, which will overlap with the weekend away I had planned with my brother, who I rarely get to see as we live so far away. She wants me to cancel my trip as she's tired and needs a break. We got into an argument over it in which unkind things were said on both sides, but I am unwilling to budge on this. How do I get through to her that I need some rest? TLDR. I pay for everything, do housework, childcare etc. while my wife is a SAHM. She wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends, which means I won't be able to go on a weekend trip with my brother, which was planned well in advance. We argued, in which she told me I need to help out more, and I basically said what's in the title. How do I get through to her? Edit/additional info. Hello all, sorry I haven't replied to many comments, but I have read most of them. I've seen a couple questions I'd like to answer and figured that making a post would be better than replying to individual comments. My children are between 16 and 6. My wife doesn't take anyone to their clubs/activities. Younger children's school finishes at 3 p.m. Their clubs are in the school. Older kids' school finishes at 3:30. They stay in a club until 4:30 and then go to a youth group with their cousins until they come home. My eldest makes their way to and from school on their own, while my youngest is picked up and dropped off. Kids are of course able to eat breakfast at home, but often enjoy eating with their friends before school starts at 8. My wife doesn't walk the dogs because she doesn't like to, and frankly, they don't like her. I enjoy my time walking the dogs because it allows me some time to think. We have a large yard with dog houses, toys and some agility equipment for them to use while I'm gone. They also get mental stimulation through Kongs and puzzle toys which have been prepared and stored in the freezer. What does my wife do all day? Honestly, she's not isolated. She often tells me of things she's done with her friends, sister, mother etc. She goes to the gym, does and enjoys hobbies such as embroidery, knitting and some jewelry design. She changes what she likes to do, says it keeps things fresh. Housework-wise, she does the laundry. I fold and distribute later. She will give dogs water and prepared meals. Enrichment. We have those robot vacuums and air purifiers to deal with the dog hair, but my wife will vacuum if heated. I wipe the countertops, put dishes in the dishwasher after meals. Older kids take care of their own rooms, bathrooms for an allowance. Have you ever not truly noticed something until it's right in front of your face? I was so mad because I wanted to go see my brother and she wanted to go on vacation with her friends. Yes, she wants me to pay for it. And things have been like this for so long that I didn't see how unfair and imbalanced things were until I truly started to look at how our duties were distributed. You've all given me a lot to think about. I'll answer some comments later. Update 1. Some of you have suggested that I enable her behavior and I'd like to address it, to explain how things got this way to begin with. My wife worked from age 16 to 20, but I'd often come home after work during the early stages of her pregnancy and she would tell me of how bad the morning sickness had been and how she was getting in trouble at work for being late or not turning up due to the issues she was having. One night, after a long discussion about things, she suggested that it would be easier and better for her and the baby if she stayed home during the pregnancy. I was reluctant at first because we weren't exactly swimming in cash, but ultimately the health of my wife and child were more important than a few months of added stress. To save money, we moved in with my wife's older sister and her husband. We split rent and utilities, but we're still saving some money. The pregnancy wasn't easy on her. She was often cranky and uncomfortable and as a result could be quite mean, rude and a bit handsy. So after further discussions with my wife and her sisters, I took on more of the household duties such as cooking, etc. When my eldest was born, my wife's sister helped with childcare while I was at work for the first year, but after she and my wife had a fight when he was about a year old, we moved into our own place. But my wife struggled during the day when I wasn't there to help, so we ultimately decided to put him in another daycare facility. I would drop him off on my way to work and would pick him up on my way back home when I finished. Once home, one of us would cook dinner while the other watched the baby. Back then we had no pets, so household duties weren't too much and could be handled by a couple hours cleaning on Saturday or Sunday when we could split it between us both. When my son was 3, my wife's sister offered to get her a job where she worked. My wife had to do an interview, but my SIL was confident she'd get the position. My wife was reluctant and nervous about returning to work, but attended the interview and was offered the job. I don't remember much of our celebrations that night, but it ended in the conception of our second child. My wife told me when she'd been at her new job for just over a month. She stuck it out for a couple more weeks, but was fired due to not turning up for shifts. I asked one of her doctors about the issues she was having so early in the pregnancy, back pain, leg pain, nausea, etc., but my wife cut me off before I could finish and asked me to leave the room. When we got home, she berated me for speaking to her doctor like she was a child and told me that if she wants something brought up to her doctor regarding her pregnancy, that she'd do it herself. I had embarrassed her because she knew her body and knew what was normal and what wasn't. I still thought the issues had to be addressed with her doctor, but whenever I brought it up her mood swings would get worse. My meal came to live with us when my second was born for a short while when I returned to work after my paternity leave. When my daughter was about 4 months old, my wife expressed that she was having difficulty looking after her by herself during the day, but my Mill, who had her own life and responsibilities, couldn't come back and stay indefinitely. We had a 2-bedroom apartment then and having her sleep on the couch didn't seem fair to me. So we enrolled my daughter in daycare while my son was at nursery. My son went to daycare after nursery as well, so I'd pick them both up around 6 p.m. and head home. My wife promised she would speak to her doctor about the possibility of depression, etc., and her mood did improve with the additional help with the children. My wife took on cooking and cleaning duties then, but struggled as well. I would often come home to burned, ruined food, and would need to make something else anyway. So I ended up cooking dinner most nights so we wouldn't be wasting food. During a weekend away for a friend's wedding, when my daughter was 5, I suggested that my wife go back to work. Both kids were in school now and I thought we could improve our lifestyle with 2 incomes. We had recently bought a house because the apartment was too small for us and the children needed their own rooms. She seemed hesitant, which I understood after being out of work for so long, but she agreed. She applied for several positions but had no luck with interviews or callbacks. We found out she was pregnant with our third not long after that, and returning to work was put on hold again. The pregnancy was difficult as expected, but again my Mill came to stay when I had to return to work. She stayed for a while but had to return to her own home eventually. Before she left, my wife told me that she feared she would struggle with our second daughter just as she had the first 2. I tried to reassure her, but she seemed to become insanely depressed the second her mother left. I would return home with the 8 and 5-year-old to a screaming baby and nothing done around the house. Her mood and actions affected the entire house. So reluctantly I put her second daughter in daycare as well, but I told my wife she had to talk to her doctor and that we'd no longer be having any more children. She was, and we had a huge fight about it. But I got a vasectomy and she accepted it. We've always used protection. My wife is on birth control and I always use condoms, but given that it had already failed twice for us, when my first was conceived after my 21st I was so drunk I don't think I wore one, our second after celebrating her new job, and our third at our friend's wedding. I didn't want it to happen again. But obviously the universe had other plans for us and our third daughter was born 2 years after our second when we were celebrating a promotion I'd gotten at work. Obviously this is a brief summary of events and there have been several other moments through the years when I've suggested she go back to work, but I thought I'd try to provide further background for those who are curious about how we got to where we are. Someone asked if my wife has had a break recently. She has never taken 2 weeks away before, but she goes away a couple of times every year for weekend trips with family and friends. The longest she has been gone is a week. In regards to the dogs and why they don't like her, she doesn't like them. She thinks the mental stimulation I provide through Kong toys, games, puzzles etc. is unnecessary but freaks out if their energy levels are too high. One is a German Shepherd which I was gifted for my birthday and the other is a German Shepherd Malinois mix my wife brought home because she thought our GSD needed a friend. Yes, they have been to training and were originally in doggy daycare for the first couple years. On to the update. Update 2. So, as one of you suggested, I took a day off of work. I genuinely wasn't feeling too good either, but I intended to speak to my wife about the situation while the children were at school. Kids all left for school by 7-ish. My wife came downstairs at 11:45 and seemed very shocked to see me. She asked what I was doing at home and I explained I took a sick day as I wasn't feeling well. The first words out of her mouth were, "But we need the money, you don't look that bad." I made a face, and she quickly asked what was wrong and asked if she could get me anything. I asked for water and we sat on the couch, but soon her phone rang and she went off into the kitchen to talk. She came back a while later and asked if I wanted to get something to eat, and I said we could make something from the kitchen. She said she wanted to go out and I said we could order takeout, but I wasn't in the mood to go out. The dogs had been sitting by the chest freezer waiting in the pantry for their lunchtime enrichment for 10 minutes now, and I asked if she was going to feed them. She flopped onto the couch and asked me to get it. I said no. She asked again, and I said no, again. She glared at me, but eventually got up and gave it to them. She asked me to take her out again several times, and I kept saying no. I was starting to get a migraine, which I told her, but she kept asking, suggesting we could go shopping, she could get her nails done and we could enjoy the day together. I refused, said we had something to talk about and she said we would then go upstairs. She came back down 40 minutes later dressed up and said if I wasn't going to take her out, she'd go herself. I tried to get her to sit down so we could talk, but she blew me a kiss at the door and rushed outside without even locking it. While she was out, I took some of your advice and canceled the cleaning lady we have. I apologized to her, as I really did like her but she was very understanding and I think we parted on good terms. She returned home at 8 p.m. and immediately asked where dinner was. I told her the kids and I had already eaten. She asked where her dinner was and I told her she'd have to make something for herself. She said she'd just order something and I told her no. This gave her pause and she looked at me like I'd just told her she had to starve. She said she couldn't cook and so told her I know she's perfectly capable of making something. We have plenty of food, it's not like she has to be Gordon Ramsay to stick a tin of soup or something on the stove. She left again, and returned 30 minutes later with McDonald's for herself which set the younger kids off. Yes, they'd already eaten but she walked in the door finishing her burger and drink with an empty bag and McFlurry tub. Our youngest asked why she didn't bring her any ice cream and my wife said Daddy said I wasn't allowed to. I did not say this, and I swear it took more strength than I'd like to admit not to yell at her in front of our daughter. When the kids were in bed, I asked her to sit and talk about the situation regarding our trips. She asked if I'd rescheduled with my brother and I firmly told her no and that I wouldn't be. I tried to have a conversation. I explained I felt our duties were incredibly uneven and that I'd like for her to take on more responsibilities with the children and the house. She argued that she does enough and I asked her to make a list. She put laundry down, feeding the dogs, making doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. And I brought out my own list with everything I've told you guys so far and added that I created the dogs' meals, she simply has to give it to them, I fold and distribute laundry, take kids to doctor's appointments, and that the groceries are ordered through an app on her phone, delivered to the house, and I put them away. She got up then. I asked what she was doing and she said she was going upstairs. I didn't argue. I didn't want it to resolve an argument and wake the kids up. She was visibly shaking with anger. A while later I went upstairs as well. She was on the phone to someone, and when I entered the room she demanded I leave and go sleep on the couch. I refused and climbed into bed. She hung up the phone and demanded again that I sleep on the couch, and again I refused. She grabbed me and physically tried to drag me out. That resulted in a fight, and I ended up sleeping on the couch because she was going to wake the kids up again. The following days were much the same. I have stopped folding and putting away her laundry. I do it for myself and the younger kids, and my two oldest take their piles and put them away themselves. I still cook for the kids, but have told my wife that she has to make her own meals. Petty, I know. I think my eldest heard us arguing because he asked if he could take the dogs out for a couple walks with his friend during the week. He hazes, and he says he's enjoying it, but I think he and my wife had an argument the other day because he's been very distant with her and things just feel off. He's asked me about 3 times if I love him, or of course I've told him there is nothing he could ever do to make me not. Yes, I've tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't want to talk yet, and I need to respect that. I think pushing him could be a mistake. Thursday night my wife asked if we could have a drink as I had to leave on Friday to see my brother. I had one, but honestly it went right to my head and honestly just wanted to sleep. She kept trying to initiate sex, but I wasn't in the mood. I woke up Friday morning and my wife was gone. So was her suitcase. I've texted and called, but there's been no answer other than a text telling me we'd talk about it when she's back. She ignored me and went on her trip regardless, and I am furious. I have left her some cash in the bank account. She has the card too, but have removed everything else into another account. I had to tell my brother why I wouldn't be coming to see him, and he arrived here on Saturday with my nephew and 2 nieces. The house is very full, but honestly it feels more open than it has in a long time. The kids seem relaxed and so do the dogs. I don't know what will happen with my wife, but I am done. I can't afford a lawyer right now, and unfortunately I don't know anyone who could give me a deal or do me a favor, but this marriage is over. It should have been a long time ago. TLDR. Wife and I talked, had an argument, she went on trip regardless, and my brother is here with his family. This sub only allows 1 update, so if I post anything further it will be on my own profile. Relevant comments. OOP on if his wife might have undiagnosed health problems including PPD. OOP. I spoke to her doctor about the issues she was having because she would not. He asked her what was happening, how she was, and she would say the pregnancy was fine. She was having no issues yet at home. All I got was how hard things were, how ill she felt, how sore she was. Screaming, yelling at me. I went to bed because I am 6.5 and work a physically and mentally demanding job. It is not good for my body to sleep on a 2-seater couch. I wanted to sleep as I had work in the morning. She escalated and got physical, not me. She made the argument worse, not me. Undiagnosed PPD? She has been to her doctor who had diagnosed her with nothing. She told me so herself, and as for me knocking her up, it takes 2 people to create a child. We do not live in America, and my wife is pro-choice. If she wants to terminate, she has the ability to do so. I told her after our second was born that I didn't think having more kids was a good idea, and she insisted. I said the same thing after our third and after my vasectomy, and she lost her mind. Let her go on vacation and feel like herself for the first time in forever. Did she not feel like herself when she went on multiple weekends away last year with her friends? Does she not feel like herself when she's hanging with the girls for lunch dates throughout the month? Do you know the last time I saw my brother in person? Before the pandemic. He is here to support me. If you want my wife to go on vacation so I can't, then it's perfectly reasonable that my brother can come to the home I pay for when I need him. Are you my wife? Update 3. I'm not going to add this to the post as it's already long enough. Please excuse any spelling mistakes as I'm so tired. Thank you all, but I'm not in America. I know a lot of you have suggested I message her telling her I'm going to divorce her, etc., but I think I'm going to play it cool, act like I've accepted her decision so she's not on guard. I know she said something to my son, but he won't tell me what it is, and I feel like if I push him to he might not ever, but my nephew and him are hanging out a lot. They're close despite not seeing each other much, so I'm hoping he might confide in him and maybe open up. I'm not just letting this go. We will talk, but I don't want to push him too much. I am not a lightweight. I can drink. But I have been exhausted, and I mean very exhausted for some time now, and I think that maybe that's why I passed out after having one drink, but I would be lying to myself and to you if I said I wasn't suspicious. I am suspicious a lot now. I swear, I'm not an idiot, but I really feel like one now. Some of you have suggested that I get the kids' DNA tested, especially my youngest, and while I know that this is likely something I'll have to do, it breaks my heart to think that they're not mine. My girls all look the same, just older versions of each other, so if I have to DNA test the youngest, I have to do them all. I never wanted kids, this is why I've always used condoms. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I love my own. I love these kids, regardless of the DNA test. They are mine, but I fear if it comes back that they're not. It could damage our relationship. My brother has read my posts and spent the last days telling me everything he hates about my wife, obviously not in front of the kids. He's pretty funny and I feel like I haven't been able to laugh like this in a long time. He says he's going to make a Reddit account, Lord knows what he'll say. Writing this update has opened my eyes further. I see how the timing of wanting her to go back to work leans up with each pregnancy, but when these things are years apart, and you're concentrating on supporting the family and work, your brain sometimes pushes these thoughts away until something triggers them again and boom, you're slapped in the face with the realization that your entire relationship is potentially built on a mountain of lies. She has her phone and iPad with her, so I can't check any of that. But I'm going to be going through her stuff. Is it in envisioning privacy? Likely. Do I care right now? No. I feel like I've wasted the majority of my life, the good years, and that feels horrible to say when I have 4 kids. I promise I don't mean that they're a waste. As I said in the post, this marriage is over. I am done. My kids deserve better, but I won't be alone when I confront her. As I said, she can get handsy, and no, I have never retaliated and I don't want to be put into a position where I need to. I thank you all for your comments, your insight, your kindness. I know I haven't replied to many comments at all, but don't really have time to do so when there are so many, but I am trying to respond to DMs as that seems like the easier thing to do. I want to ask my Sil what actually happened with my wife and that job. But I don't want her to know I'm suspicious. My Sil is a kind woman, but she is my wife's sister, so her loyalties lay with her, I suppose, and I don't want to alert my soon-to-be ex. Does anyone have any ideas how I can do this? Seems odd to bring up a job my wife had for a very brief time years ago. I wish you all the best. Relevant comments. OOP on the accusations for not respecting his wife's needs and wants. OOP, how do I not respect her needs, wants? I pay for everything and do the majority of the child, pet care and housework. I have not gone on vacation in years because I was providing for my family. I have given her everything she's wanted for the past 17 years and she couldn't give me a weekend with my brother. Why couldn't we both go on vacation? Because I don't randomly have the money to fund 2 weeks away for her. I can't just up and leave my 16-year-old to look after 3 younger kids and 2 high-energy dogs. I couldn't take them with me because that would mean multiple plane tickets and accommodations, food etc. for them, as well as dog sitting. Boarding for the dogs. New update. Hello all, I'm sorry it's taken so long to update. Things are not good. While this update will be small, I will try to do a longer one when things are a little better. Yes, we are separated and will be getting a divorce. My FIL has graciously offered to help. It's taken me so long to update because, as most of you already knew, some of the children aren't mine. My eldest son is mine, my 3 daughters are not. I found out not long after my first update. And while I thought I could handle the news clearly, my body couldn't and I had a heart attack. Thankfully, my brother was with me and called an ambulance. I am recovering, but Jesus Christ scared the shite out of me and my family. As some of you may remember, when my ex left for vacation, I took the majority of the money out of the account she used but left some as I didn't want to leave her stranded. That money, about 500 or so, was gone in a few days. She used her own money that she's been making from OnlyFans to fund her trip. Yes, I'm serious. She has only a fan account. My son had offered to take the dogs out for me during his lunch/free class time and walked in on his mother making content. In the living room. She told him that I wasn't making enough money for the family to survive and that she had to be the only fan to help support us. She told him I was ashamed and embarrassed and that I would be very unhappy and hurt if he mentioned it. She told him that doing so could ruin our marriage and could lead us to divorce. My in-laws know everything, as my brother had to call them to help watch my kids while I was in the hospital. My FIL is furious and my MIL is just devastated. She keeps apologizing to me, like she's the one who betrayed me. My ex moved out. She tried to make me leave so she could stay in the house with the kids, but after a conversation with her father, she's renting a place. My eldest daughter and my son know the girls aren't mine. My ex told them after they said they didn't want to go live with her at her new place. My mill was with them at the time and, according to my daughter, began screaming at my wife for her behavior. My youngest two don't know yet. But they will. This isn't something I can keep from them forever. They already know that something is up. I've cut my hours back at work and have been able to work from home. It's obviously a desk job for now, but I am thankful to my boss for working with me on this. I came home to find out that my mill and one of my sills had cleared out my wife's hobby space and made it an office den for me. I am very grateful for their support during this. I know it can and be easy to take the side of your daughter, sister's ex-partner during a breakup, but I appreciate them. While things aren't great by any stretch of the imagination, I feel strange. Things seem calmer without my ex in the house. There seems to be more laughter around, and even the dogs appear more at ease. But I am so angry, which obviously isn't good for my heart. I've wasted a huge chunk of my life raising kids that aren't mine in a marriage that was messed up from the beginning. Now please, don't take what I said as me saying I regret my girls. I don't at all. They are smart, beautiful, cheeky little weirdos in love with all of my heart. But the betrayal stings. The fact that I've been working my ass off for years and she's been making thousands on OnlyFans and been keeping it to herself stings. I am ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, angry, relieved. It's a mess of emotions in my head. But I know I'll get through it. Hopefully, I need to for my kids and dogs. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer in the comments. Am I the asshole for divorcing my wife after she thought I was lying about being raped as a child? As context, I was repeatedly raped by my brother's babysitter when I was around 9. She would grope me, force me to remove my pants, and then either stick my dick in her mouth or try and give me a handjob whenever my 4-year-old brother slept. Most of the time I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything to stop it. She would always buy me sweets or video games for my DS as a reward. So in a weird way I started growing attached to her and would try and seek the abuse if it meant getting her rewards. I knew whatever she was doing was wrong, but she would always threaten to take my life if I ever told my parents, so I never did while the abuse was actively happening. Everything stopped as soon as she graduated college and moved states. I only realized how fucked up the things she did to me were when I was around 14-15 and understood the concept of consent. When I tried to open up to my parents, strict Catholics, it never ended well. First, they blamed it on porn and claimed it corrupted my mind into imagining these things happening to me. If I claimed I was telling the truth, my dad would beat the shit out of me and my mom would ground me. I tried opening up to my friends, but their reactions weren't any better. My male friends just called me lucky and asked if the BJ was good. My female friends claimed I was just lying to get attention and laughed in my face. I learned to just try and forget the past and vowed to myself that I would never mention this to anyone again. Now on to last week. My wife had heard some good things about this show called Baby Reindeer on Netflix from our friends. Going into it, I knew it revolved around sexual abuse and stalking. In my mind, I thought I was over the past, and I could handle watching the show no problem. Big fucking mistake. At the end of episode 4, I was literally on the verge of tears and I felt all the supposedly forgotten memories come flooding back. At the end of the next episode, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife paused the show and just stared at me. After a while, I did finally manage to calm down a bit. She asked me why I was crying and I just let everything out. She said she was sorry, hugged me, and we went to bed soon after. I apologized to her the following morning for ruining our night. From the moment I let her know about the abuse, I felt something change in our relationship. No more kisses when I came back from work and no more initiating anything intimate from her side. She wasn't mean or anything, but I felt like something was bothering her. I tried to apologize for maybe making her uncomfortable, but she would just claim there was nothing bothering her and I was just being paranoid. Yesterday, me and my wife got into a pretty heated argument about her lying about taking out the trash, but during the argument she said something that floored me beyond belief. She literally said, "At least I'm not lying about being raped, you fucking narcissist." I literally couldn't process whatever just came out of her mouth. She tried apologizing right after saying that, but I just packed a few clothes and left to stay at my friend's house. She tried calling me several times since, but I haven't bothered picking up and have blocked her for time being. I know I might have trauma dumped on her and I know women aren't into that, but I just want some sort of acknowledgement, support. I don't have anyone left to turn to with this, and that's why I'm posting here. I've had 2 therapists to date and both didn't seem to help much. My gut is telling me to divorce her, but she's genuinely the love of my life. Throwing away 6 years because of this one moment doesn't sit right with me, but IDK. WIBTA for divorcing her? Am I actually the asshole here? I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions on my situation, and if you've read this all the way through, thank you. Relevant comments. Danny Caps fan. My heart aches for you. Being sexually abused is bad enough, but that nobody believed you and either mocked you or punished you for telling what happened is horrific. And I was going to suggest therapy, but I looked at your post again and saw that it didn't do much for you. Maybe a rape crisis center will be able to recommend a therapist who has experience with victims of CSA. What your wife said is appalling. It seems you feel she doesn't love you since your revelation and isn't on your side. That's reason enough to want to leave her. NTA Gnome 5314, NTA. You did something brave by opening up and she threw it back in your face. I'm sorry that you've faced such rejection your whole life. Unfortunately, that is all too common for men who have been sexually assaulted. It's up to you to decide if you want her back, but either way is valid. OP, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure this happens a lot to women as well. I went to a few anonymous meetings and heard a lot of the same from women who claim people just thought they were trying to get a settlement or something. Hot Cross Buns, 72, NTA. As a CSA survivor, the turning point for me in my marriage was when he told me to get over it, and it's been so long. We are now divorced. While it wasn't the sole reason I left, knowing that he wasn't a safe space for me anymore, if at all, was a driving force. So while I won't tell you to leave her, I will say you do need to speak with a professional regarding the assault and keep her at a distance while you work through your emotions. She can never take back what she said to you, and there needs to be consequences for that. Send PHX. And to add to the part about talking to a professional, OP, you mentioned the ones you've talked to haven't helped. I would keep trying and go to a different therapist until you find one with whom you mesh well. See if you can find one who has a focus on sexual abuse trauma, and even check if they have experience in this area with male clients. Unlucky_addendum. 3425, NTA also. I wouldn't call what you did trauma dumping. You opened up to your wife. You're supposed to support each other. I'm sure she was probably shocked, would explain some of her lack of empathy. But to call you a liar and a narcissist, no. You've spent enough time being invalidated by assholes. Deleted user, not only that. Weaponize the trauma of one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone to make OP feel small, guilty, betrayed, insecure, alone, invalid, then call them a narcissist and a liar. To retaliate for being called out not taking the bins out. It's monstrous. OP is right to consider that an instant relationship ends. Because fuck me, it's so many layers of evil. Imaginary Yak 6487, NTA. Therapy. I'm a CSA survivor. I'm a woman. I told my ex-husband about some of it after a trauma response to something he was attempting to do sexually. I wasn't comfortable and didn't think I could. He seemed to be understanding. One night after he had been drinking heavily, he tried to do this again and I said no. He said, why not? I'm not the one who RP'd you, so don't take your bullshit out on me by denying me. He assaulted me and did it anyway. Did y'all know that back in the late 80s there was no laws on the books about martial rape until 1993? BC, you couldn't rape your wife back then? He's an ex-husband for a reason. She needs to be an ex for a reason as well. I wish you the best. Leanna Shaw. I don't think you can call that trauma dumping. If she was some random girl you were on a first date with, yeah, sure. But she's your wife, and that's the sort of established relationship that should be a safe place for you to open up about past traumas. The fact that it ended up *not* being safe isn't your fault, and I'm so sorry that she responded to you the way she did. I understand feeling conflicted about divorce, because it is such a hard thing to go through, but you absolutely would not be wrong to do so. I wish you the best, whatever you decide to do. AITA does not have a consensus bot, but OOP was voted NTA in most comments. Most of the comments were supportive, giving advice and telling their stories. Some downvoted commenters advised OOP to never cry or open up in front of women. Update. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the amazing love and support. For the first time in my life I felt heard and didn't just feel like a burden to people. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but I just want to let you all know that I'm beyond grateful. As for the update. Shortly after posting, I decided to go back home. I had work the next day and didn't want to burden my friend with my marital issues any longer. Upon coming home, I was met with her screaming at me for just leaving the apartment and ghosting her without having an adult conversation with her. I just let her know how hurt I was by the things she said to me and that I needed some time to myself to gather my thoughts. She tried arguing back with how there is nothing to think about and that I was being an immature crybaby. From that point onwards, we have barely been on speaking terms. I know a lot of people are going to be mad hearing this, but the longer I thought about my marriage and my wife, the more I wanted to give her another chance. She wasn't perfect by any means, but neither was I. A lot of my past relationships ended as a result of my past catching up with me, but I really want to change it this time. She isn't the first partner friend to have this type of reaction to what I went through. I know it's tough, but I feel like I just needed to bite the bullet if it meant keeping my sanity. I didn't want to start over again. After we somewhat started talking to each other again, I sat her down for a serious conversation and let her know again how hurt I was by everything she said. I let her know about all the ridicule I suffered as a result of me opening up and her having the same reaction, just reopened unhealed wounds. She just kept quiet until I mentioned couples therapy. She then started crying, but not for the reason I thought. I tried holding her, but she just pushed me away and screamed that I seriously thought about ending our marriage over some silly argument we had and that I was just trying to make up some sob story after watching Baby Reindeer for attention and sympathy. According to her, all of this was just too convenient to be believable. If it was real, why didn't I mention any of this throughout the 6 years we have been together? At this point, I even started tearing up. I apologized for keeping this from her for so long and then tried reassuring her that I in fact wasn't making this up, but she just slapped me and stormed off to bed. That was a week ago and I have been sleeping on the couch ever since. Whenever I try to speak to my wife, she just makes snarky comments towards me and just storms off. I just cry myself to sleep most nights and just wish I never fucking watched that show. None of this shit would have happened. I currently don't have the money for therapy and just feel lost. I don't want a divorce. I want to try and make this work, but this whole mess is just so draining. I'm not in contact with my family, so I don't have anyone I can turn to with this. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Relevant comments. Just Anthony. There is no saving this relationship. From the looks of it, you're going to end up miserable and ultimately stop telling her things to avoid arguments and/or belittling from her end. Be honest with yourself. What exactly are you looking for in marriage counseling? She'll need her own individual therapy before she can take on marriage counseling. It won't get anywhere if only one person acknowledges there's a problem. OP, I understand you've been with her for 6 years and she's by far the best you've had, but she isn't the best for you, let alone the one. Why compromise the rest of your life to her when you can get out and move on? You're only 27. You have so much time to get out there and find someone who loves and respects you. All of you. You still have so much time to find someone who'll take you and your trauma seriously, who will work with you every step of the way no matter what it is, who will own up to their own faults in a so-called adult conversation. You deserve better. You know you do. Don't settle for less. You wouldn't treat yourself the same way your wife does. Get therapy, when you have the money, and work on yourself if you believe that you have flaws of your own that contribute to a relationship's failure. It's a cliché saying, but it's better to have no company than bad company. OP, everyone here supports and believes in you. The only person left is you. You can do it. Within 10 years, you will look back at this and thank yourself for leaving this situation. It's hard work, but you can do it. Fits design. At the end of the day, staying with her is increasing your trauma. Please leave her for your own sake. Ratty handwriting. Sir, I have been married for 18 years. I have known my husband for 22 years. After 9 years together, he disclosed that he was attacked and raped at the age of 14, after knowing throughout our relationship that I was also a survivor of child sexual abuse. I tell you this because I want you to know what my response was. I held him while he cried. I asked if he wanted to report it to the police. I supported him when he didn't. I encouraged him to seek counseling. When he was ready, I talked to him about my own experiences. At no point did I belittle him, disbelieve him, make him feel less of a man, criticize him, tear him down, and I certainly did not act physically violent towards him. Your wife's behavior is so far on the other fucking side of normal, I wonder, frankly, if she's human. You deserve better. This is cruel and vicious behavior on the part of your wife. She's a horrible, horrible person and she will never improve, but you have the rest of your life to live happily. Please, 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 walk away. Odd_task, 8211. What you are going through isn't normal and this is not a healthy relationship. Your wife is abusive. She belittles your experience as an abuse survivor. Then she hit you. That's 3 strikes in my book. You can do much better than this abusive woman. For your own mental health, you would be better off without her. OOP. I understand, but I'm afraid I won't find another GF wife after her. I have issues being intimate, sexually, and rightfully a lot of women aren't into that. My wife was waiting till marriage, so it worked out perfectly for the both of us. Sons of Sparta 1984. Dude. I was also raped as a boy, by a man. There's plenty of women who don't judge for that kind of thing. The fear of being alone shouldn't keep you in an abusive relationship. Up until where she slapped you, it could have been explained away by a bad reaction to uncomfortable information, but it's never okay to hit someone you're in a relationship with, regardless of who has what in their pants. OP. Yeah, she wasn't the first partner I've had that slapped me. I just added it to my update thinking it wasn't that big of a deal, but people here have made me realize it isn't normal. First_alfalfa 2805. People start over in their 70s, and you are going to stay with this unsympathetic woman. A woman who doesn't care enough to believe you and then belittle you. Are you seriously willing to stay in this relationship? Sir, you were sexually abused. Your wife doesn't care and isn't supportive and is mentally abusive towards you. Well, if you don't want to start over, okay. OP. Thank you, but please understand that I've spent 6 years with her, 7 in August. She's the first one that was willing to accept some of the flaws I have. Edit. I've realized that I'm just beating a dead horse by using this as justification to stay with her. I'm contacting a divorce lawyer. Mike Reddit. 74. You're talking about what's called a sunk cost fallacy. It's the belief that because you've invested so much time and money into something that you can't give it up. This marriage has run its course. Burdened, Mind 79. Accept you? She ridiculed you, and then when you apologized, which you did not need to do, quite frankly, she physically assaulted you. She called you a liar and struck you. This woman does not accept you. She's even turned down the option of couples therapy, so clearly has no interest in making this work. What she wants is for you to be wrong and her to be right, and she's not going to change until you bend your reality to fit her desires. You can't do that, because it will destroy you. If you think wasting 6 years is bad, just imagine how you'll feel when you've wasted 40 years on someone who belittles your trauma and hits you when she can't handle the reality of a situation. Think about that for a while. Do you really want to spend decades living with someone who thinks the best way of dealing with situations she doesn't like is to simply hit you and run away? You can do better. New update. Again, I just want to thank everyone for the amazing love and support you guys have shown me on my last 2 posts. Even though the response on my last post wasn't what I expected, it was a reality check for me. I'm beyond grateful for all the DMs and I promise I'll get to responding to all of them someday, but I'm going through a lot at the moment, so please bear with me. I have over 200 unread DMs. After I posted my update, I realized that I was definitely in an abusive relationship, and even though I wanted to make the marriage work, she has shown zero willingness to change her attitude towards what I went through. 2 days after posting my update, I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. I gave her plenty of chances and she has time and time shown me that she won't even acknowledge my trauma, let alone show me any form of support. I initially kept everything a secret and slowly started preparing my assets, savings, joint bank accounts, etc. I did finally tell her about me filing for divorce and she didn't take it well. She tried fighting it and claimed I will never find anyone else that's willing to put up with a giant pussy who can't even admit he wanted whatever happened to him. According to her, no woman is willing to put up with an attention-seeking crybaby like myself. I'm not going to lie. What she said got me, and for a brief moment I considered halting the divorce, but after she came home drunk one night and berated me for an hour straight, she snapped me back into reality. I don't know where the woman I fell in love with went, but that wasn't her. Looking back now, she'd given me plants of red flags, but I just ignored them for the sake of being loved for once in my life. For once I wasn't called gay for not being able to have sex when immediately getting into a relationship, wasn't laughed at for having random seizures, etc. I moved out of our apartment after her rant and have been staying with my friends ever since. After she realized I wasn't coming back anytime soon, she DM'd all my friends claiming that I was an attention whore and was making up some sob story about being raped and that she was the one actually filing for divorce. Not only that, but she also told them that I was physically abusive and, according to her, They shouldn't hang around a guy that hits women. Most of my friends just immediately called me names, told me I failed as a man and blocked me. The friend I'm currently staying with seems to be the only person on my side. I also want to mention that I moved away from the US to live with my grandparents in Europe when I was 19. I mentioned it in one of my comments, so I thought I'd mention it here. There were people who thought that she might have contacted my parents and that fueled her reaction to the abuse I faced. There is literally zero chance she can contact them since I didn't even tell her their names. I was doing an apprenticeship at a bank and she even started sending them evidence of me abusing her. I have no clue what she wrote to them. I had a meeting with HR on the 20th and they've decided to fire me. I tried fighting it, but they just said that I wasn't worth the hassle. I'm now back doing construction, don't have a proper education, and have lost almost all of the people I'm close with. I'm just beyond tired at this point. Not angry, not sad, just numb. I feel like whenever I try to take a step forward, I take 3 steps backwards. Maybe I am just this unlovable and pathetic. Maybe I deserve all that's coming to me. I just don't know anymore. As stated by the title, this will be my last post. Reddit has given me so much great advice and made me realize so many things, and I'm beyond grateful for every single one of you who helped me, but it's also destroyed my mental health. For every 50 positive and supportive comments and DMs I've received, I've had one person say the same things I've heard all my life, and I've let those people get to me. A lot of people asked me why the hell I have such strong feelings towards my babysitter giving me blowjobs. First of all, I was 9 and she on multiple occasions threatened to take my life. Second of all, I left a lot of the other details out of my post because those memories are just too painful and I didn't think it was relevant for the purpose of my original post. I'm going to mention them here since I've nothing left to lose at this point. She would shove things up my ass like cucumbers, pens, etc. She would regularly hit me in the balls to punish me for disobeying her. She would dress me up as a girl and would force me to dance for her and pose in suggestive positions. There were times where I couldn't walk properly because of the things she did to me, and I got ruthlessly bullied in school as a result. How would you guys navigate my situation? Any advice would be appreciated. Thank you so much for reading this far into my post and supporting me over these past few weeks. Just a big thank you to 2u/writing_mm_romance and you in that page for checking up on me and genuinely being amazing human beings. They helped me through some seriously dark times. Relevant comments. Historical Maine. 8196. I'm so sorry, you didn't deserve this. Not at all. Please change your number and any other contact information you have. If you are still at your friend's place, please use that time to find a job, something you can use to support yourself. I don't know how hard it may be for you to get an education degree, but it doesn't hurt to try. Also, if she comes at you again, document any form of contact in case the authorities get involved. Xcypher 96. I'm so sorry for what has happened to you. You deserve better. I'm surprised most of your friends really believed her story over yours. Did you try to explain your side to them? OOP. Yes, but they didn't listen. She used my mental health issues, ADHD and BPD, as a way to back up her claims, and they all believed her. Base clean. I'm terribly sorry that this happened to you. All of it. I am a survivor too, and it really fucks you up. It never leaves you, but you can work through it. It takes time and dedication. I'm sure that there are free support groups. I don't know where you are located, but in the US there's one that's specifically for male survivors. Just keep taking good care of yourself. I'm so glad you've found support here. You deserve it and all the good things. Also, she is obviously a miserable person and karma will come for her. I feel like you have a form of receipts in your posts here to show your innocence, but who would want to be friends with people like that? It's a tough pill to swallow, but just look at the whole thing as getting rid of a lot of dead weight. I would also consult with a lawyer about that employer letting you go. LMK if there's anything I can do to help. 29M. Think that my girlfriend, 26F, is only with me because she can't be with her best friend, 26M. Should I just end the relationship? Sorry for the long post, I didn't realize how much I had to say until I got it all typed out. Thanks in advance to anyone who reads all this. I've been with my girlfriend Jordan for a little over 2 years, we live together and we have 2 cats. Up until this weekend I genuinely thought everything was perfect in our relationship, which I know is what everyone says in these posts, but I really was thinking that I was going to ask her to marry me sometime in the next year. We don't ever get into arguments. Jordan is very sweet and easygoing and normally we just mesh well on everything. Honestly, If everything in our relationship hadn't been so good up until now, I probably would have just broken up with her this weekend. But because things have truly been so perfect, I'm not sure if maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion about what to do because my feelings got hurt. The other person who's important in this story is Jordan's friend Mark. She's known Mark for their whole lives because they both grew up in the same small religious community. Jordan isn't part of that religion anymore. She decided to leave the church when she was, I think, 19 and moved to the state that we live in now. Mark still is in the religion and apparently takes it really seriously. I'm told he now works for the church back in Jordan's hometown. Also, as far as I know, Mark is the only person from the religious community that Jordan still talks to besides her parents, which I'm mentioning because I now think it could be a red flag. So on Saturday I met Mark for the first time because he was in our city and Jordan wanted us all to have dinner together. At this point I want to say, I will admit that when we were first dating, I found out that Jordan had a best friend who was a guy I didn't really like, especially because it seemed like they were on FaceTime with each other a lot. But since it was a childhood friend and they mostly didn't see each other in person, I just trusted Jordan that Mark was only a friend and didn't let it bother me, and eventually I got over it. So when we were going to dinner, I wasn't jealous or suspicious of Mark at all. If anything, I was somewhat excited to finally be meeting him since I've been hearing about him for 2 years. But then the way Jordan and Mark acted at dinner is what convinced me that there's something going on there other than just being best friends. I honestly don't even know how to describe it except to say that I've never seen two people act more obviously like they were in love with each other. They literally would not stop touching each other. They were constantly touching each other's arms and shoulders, and at some points they were actually even holding hands. They completely left me out of the conversation and were laughing about inside jokes, and every time they'd laugh they'd do this thing where they put their foreheads together, or that was when they'd be holding hands. And then also they were just looking at each other in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. It was honestly even worse than the touching. It just wasn't how anyone would look at somebody they're supposedly just friends with. I'm 100% sure that every stranger looking at our table thought that Jordan and Mark were the couple and that I was her brother or something. I felt like a third wheel the whole time, and Jordan didn't even notice how awkward she was making it for me because she was way too focused on Mark and all the attention she was getting from him. And that's really not like Jordan at all. Usually she's a lot more considerate and would notice immediately if I wasn't having a good time or if she was accidentally being rude and excluding someone at the table. So it was genuinely really jarring to be sitting there with her and Mark and basically feeling like I didn't know my girlfriend at all. It was like he turned her into a completely different person who didn't even care that I was alive. So finally, at one point when Jordan got up to go to the bathroom, I just said to Mark, "So are you into my girl or what's going on here?" Mark: "Nothing's going on at all. That ship sailed a long time ago." Me: "What does that mean? Did you guys date at some point?" Mark: "No, we never did. And then when she left the church, we both knew it meant that we were never going to. And we've accepted being in each other's lives as friends. There's nothing else going on at all." Me: "That makes it sound like the only reason you're not together is because she left the church." And all Mark did was shrug. Me: "Well, what if she came back to the church? Would you marry her?" Mark: "Oh, she's not going to do that. You might as well ask what would happen if a bicycle had 6 tires." And so then when Jordan came back to the table, Mark said to her, "OP wants to know if we'd be married if you weren't a godless heathen." Jordan: "Why did you two call your mom while I was gone?" And then she and Mark both just laughed about it and changed the subject. So because of dinner and that conversation and everything else that I've written about in this post, I really feel like Jordan and Mark are in love with each other and not just best friends like they say. And the only reason they aren't together is because they can't compromise about their religion. I think Jordan thinks that because she's okay with that decision, she expects me to be okay with being her second choice, and in the meantime she's actually secretly wanting to be with Mark. So that makes me think that I should probably obviously just have self-respect and break up with her, because I shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who would rather be with somebody else. But then the problem for me is that our relationship has been so perfect and Jordan has always treated me so well except for this one night. The only time she's ever acted like this was on the one occasion that Mark was around in person. Normally, even when she's talking to him all the time, she's never made me feel this way. So on the one hand, I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't matter what Jordan's feelings are for Mark. As long as he isn't going to be around, it doesn't actually seem to affect our relationship. So maybe I just need to cool off and go back to trusting her that they are indeed only friends, even if it seems to be true that they have complicated feelings for each other. Or should I just end things? Relevant comments. Or Michalski. What did Jordan say about all this when you two got home and had a private discussion? We didn't talk about it again. I've just been trying to weigh things out on my own for the last few days. I wasn't sure how I should try to talk to her about it or if that was the best idea. In reply. Cap does it. I mean, the only way forward at this point is to talk to your girlfriend. You need to sit down with her and have a frank discussion about the events of the night and what made you uncomfortable. How she responds to your concerns will tell you almost everything you need to know. The main thing I would be concerned about when starting the conversation is that your girlfriend seems like she might be quick to brush off any of your concerns without hearing them out. If she does that, you need to push back. Make it clear that you need to be heard on this issue and that she needs to take you seriously here. Then really, you just need to first of all tell her that you found a lot of her actions with Jordan to be not only inappropriate but hurtful to you. Establish boundaries as well. Be explicit, the hand-holding, pressing their foreheads up against one another, etc. All goes far beyond what best friends do with each other. I think your best bet is to mostly frame the conversation around that. What you do from there really depends on how your girlfriend reacts to that. I can see it going one of two ways. This would be the ideal situation, but maybe she genuinely did not realize what she was doing in that environment. She was in a weird church cult for what seems like a decent chunk of her life. It's possible that she sees that behavior as normal and not at all concerning. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it could go a long way to alleviate your concerns. She goes on the defensive and claims you are exaggerating what happened. You're just being jealous. That's just how their relationship is. I'd say that if she immediately responds with being defensive, then that tells you more or less all you need to know. Either way though, you need to talk to her and she needs to understand that her actions were inappropriate. It might be tempting to sweep it under the rug if she tries to laugh it off. After all, how often are you really going to be interacting with this Mark * person anyway? But if you're really considering a long-term thing with this girl, you need to think in the long term. Say you do get married to this girl, you really want to fully commit yourself to someone who you believe would drop you for someone else in a heartbeat. Thanks for this comment. This gives me a lot of good stuff to think about. A couple of people have mentioned that her behavior around Mark might have a different context than I thought because of how they grew up. Not that that means I should let it go and not tell her that it bothered me, but that maybe she didn't realize that it doesn't seem normal and maybe it's not as much as a sign of something as I thought. So I might start by just bringing up to her, I think that could be a good idea. There are comments on how inappropriate GF's behavior was. Ali_cat 222. I may get some hate for this, but I am a F whose best friend is a guy and I don't even do more than give him a quick hug before we part after hanging out. That may just be me, but I couldn't imagine holding hands and touching foreheads together, especially if my SO was there if I had one. How does growing up with someone equate to needing to hold hands, touching forearms, etc.? To me that comes off as disrespectful. Now having said that though, I do believe the best thing to do is talk to her. Ignoring it won't get you anywhere. And I will admit that the way I may view things doesn't mean that's the way she viewed it, nor necessarily was trying to be flirtatious either. The only way to work through things in a relationship is letting your partner know how you feel in situations. If you don't discuss things that you may be feeling uncomfortable with, you won't have a good continual foundation for your relationship otherwise. I wish you all the best and hope you can work things out. Rezua R. Touching foreheads and holding hands? I mean, the rest of it is over the line but maybe excusable in some way. But this? I don't know how you didn't say something when it happened. It just seems so bizarre to me for friends to do that. There has to be something more. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise, no matter how you try and view it. Maybe they think of each other as the one that got away. Maybe some kind of tragedy. Romeo and Juliet. Right person, wrong circumstances kind of thing. What I really think is that at the least, this will happen every time Mark makes an appearance in your lives. And at worst you'll always be second to him, whether he's there or not. Aliando Elise. My jaw dropped when I read that, for real. Nora Ray J. Same, I could not imagine being OP at that moment. It would make me cry if my partner did that to me. Sidri. She obviously carries a torch that will never go out. If knowing your runner-up is something you can live with, give it a shot. But 2 years isn't long and there's a lot of years left. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. That's the big thing that scares me, because I do think that I could maybe live with the fact that there was someone else before me and that she eventually did choose me over him. But then I think about what could happen if Mark decided that he was ever going to leave the church like Jordan did. Which doesn't seem like it's going to happen from the way they both talk about it, but then I know that I'm a different person now at 29 than I was when I was 26, so it's not impossible for him to change his mind. And then if that really was the only reason that Jordan was with me, of course she'd leave to go be with him like what she always wanted. First update. 2 days later. I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night. The TLDR update to the situation is that I didn't break up with her. After we talked about everything, I feel like that would be too much of an overreaction for what's actually going on. I do still think I was right to be upset about what I saw happening at dinner on Saturday, and Jordan didn't disagree with me about that. But I think I did jump to the wrong conclusion that it meant that she secretly actually wanted to be with Mark more than she wanted to be with me. Now that we've talked it out, I don't think there's a reason to end what's otherwise the best relationship I've ever had, and I'm glad that I didn't just immediately trust my instincts, because there was more going on with the situation that I didn't really understand that Jordan has since told me, and now I do feel like she can be given some grace in this situation, assuming nothing like this ever happens again. So thanks for the advice, especially for everyone who told me to just talk to her before I made a big decision. So when we talked, I decided to take the main piece of advice that I got from everyone and start by telling Jordan that my feelings were hurt by the way she treated me at dinner with Mark, and then see how the conversation went from there. It turned into a very long talk, so I don't want to try to remember exact quotes and get them wrong, but here are the important things. I repeated to Jordan some of what I wrote in the post and said that I felt excluded by her and Mark, especially because they were being overly touchy-feely with each other to the point where it made me uncomfortable. Jordan seemed surprised, like she didn't even notice that she and Mark were touching each other that much, but then she thought about it and said that I was right and apologized. She said that Mark is always really touchy with everybody and not just her, I asked, and so she didn't even think about it, but that she wished I would have said something at the time because she didn't realize they were being that obnoxious. I said that was part of what bothered me, because I thought that normally she would have noticed something like that, but she was acting so different around Mark and not paying any attention to anything else, including how I was feeling, that it was honestly just made me question which one of us she cared about more, or if she cared about him as more than just a friend. Jordan apologized more and said that she could understand why it would look that way to me, but that she loves me and cares more about me than anyone else in the world, and that she didn't mean to act like that or make me feel that way. She said that she was trying to not make Mark feel like a third wheel because of being a single guy out with a couple, but obviously it backfired and just made me feel like the third wheel instead, which wasn't what she wanted to do either. After that, Jordan explained a lot to me about her history with Mark, and basically as she explained it, she said that she fully admits she cares about him as more than just a normal friend, but she says that it's not in a romantic way. She said that's why she always specifically refers to him as her best friend, and not just as her friend, and said that she would use the phrase "he's like my brother" if it weren't for the fact that she once had an actual brother, RIP, so she won't use that phrasing for anyone else. According to Jordan, the main thing that happened to make her and Mark so close was that when she was 17 she tried to kill herself. And that was actually when everyone else in the community stopped talking to her and Mark was the only person who didn't. For the next couple of years until she moved, he was literally her only friend, and she said that he checked on her every single day to make sure she stayed alive, which is also when they got into the habit of talking on the phone so much. And also apparently during this time Mark's parents thought they were dating and made a big deal about how they shouldn't be, and that's why she made that remark during dinner. Apparently calling Jordan a godless heathen is something that Mark's mom said. I did tell Jordan that Mark basically said to me that he thought the two of them would be married if she had stayed in the church, and I asked her if she thinks that maybe Mark is in love with her even if she doesn't feel the same way. She said definitely not, and I don't think she was being dishonest. I really don't agree with her, but I think she genuinely believes that Mark isn't into her in any way apart from friendship. Her opinion of the situation is that she also thinks she and Mark would eventually have gotten married if she had never left the church or moved. But from her perspective it would have been more because of peer pressure than anything else, and she doesn't think it would necessarily have been a good thing. She thinks Mark was just being honest about that, and that possibly from his perspective he thinks he and Jordan would have made a good couple, but he's probably thinking that because he's just assuming that in that scenario she'd be the perfect church wife, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be a good couple. But then the big thing that happened at the end of the conversation is that Jordan told me that Mark is coming back through our city on his way home from this trip. And so she was going to invite him to hang out with the two of us again, but she said that if I'm going to be uncomfortable with him around then she won't ask him. A lot of people were saying that if she didn't offer to cut contact with him or to cut down on contact with him it meant that she valued him over me, So the fact that she brought up on her own that she wouldn't invite him to dinner with us again because I didn't like it seemed like a really good sign to me. Based on everything else that she said, I do understand why she didn't offer to totally stop being friends with him, and I wouldn't expect her to after what she told me about what happened when she was a teenager. So now I'm deciding to take Jordan's word for it that although she and Mark are weirdly close, it's for the reasons that she explained to me and not because she's in love with him. I think the fact that she was immediately apologetic instead of defensive was good, and the way she explained everything did make sense to me. I don't necessarily trust Mark, but I do think I can trust Jordan. But I am going to watch and see if it seems like she's still talking to him as much as she used to, or if anything changes or sounds different. I'm not going to be controlling and tell her that she can't talk to him or that she has to talk to him less, but I want to see if me talking to her about all of this causes her to act any differently at all. I'm kind of thinking she might realize on her own that the way Mark acts towards her actually does seem like he likes her more than a friend now that I've brought it up, but I don't know. It could be that things just go back to exactly the way they were before, and I won't know if anything has actually changed until the next time Mark is around in person, but I don't think that's something I should keep worrying about before it happens. Relevant comments signal _Blackberry 326. Holding hands with your opposite sex friend and pushing your foreheads together in front of your monogamous partner is wild, but you do you, homie. Tamerlane _Tully. Well, Reddit, congratulations, we definitely accomplished nothing here. There's some sober pushback in the comments. OOP mostly stands his ground. Pixel _Spartan 117. OP, did she acknowledge that the touching by her was inappropriate? I do not see how she could not have recognized how touchy they were and her lack of physical touch with you. Like many others have said, I am not sure Jordan was being completely honest with you. Did you ask her how she would have felt in a reverse situation? If the three of you meet again, you might want to think about excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or something during the meal and instead hide and film their interaction while you are gone. See if Jordan changes how she interacts when you are not there. I say to capture it on your phone because then you have it to show her if you break up. If she interacts appropriately while you are gone, then she may have gotten the message. She should also start limiting her interactions with him, phone text, because that relationship is not healthy and no SO should have to deal with that if you two get married. It needs to be dealt with now. She did acknowledge that all the touching was inappropriate, yes. When she actually thought back on how much they were doing it and how over the top it was, she was embarrassed and realized she shouldn't have started acting like that just because Mark makes it seem normal. I didn't ask her how she'd feel in the reverse situation because it seemed like she got it immediately as soon as I told her how it made me feel. Unleashed 99. I am glad you spoke up and I am glad you received some clarity on the situation. Unfortunately, I think your girlfriend is lying. The problem is that she is not really lying to you. I mean, she is, but really she's lying to herself. If she is talking to this guy every day and not even realizing how physical she got with him when they met up after being physically separated for so long. She has been lying to herself for so long that the lies to you were just shrapnel from the nuclear lies she keeps telling herself. Obviously, they aren't a compatible couple long-term with their core beliefs being so different, but they have fed their emotional bond for so long that their connection is intense. Dude, she didn't even realize she was physically wrapped into this man with her long-term boyfriend right next to her. That speaks volumes. I have been coaching individuals in the infidelity realm long enough to have seen this same story play out 1,000 times now. I pray I am wrong for your sake, OP. But I fear if she doesn't entirely cut off Mark, you'll be either here or in our surviving infidelity in the next 2 years with a shocked Pikachu face on saying, just found out my fiancé has been cheating with her best friend Mark. I say that and I know it comes out a little snarky, but in all honesty my heart breaks saying it. Having been through betrayal like that personally, I'd gladly sacrifice many things in my own life to help prevent others from experiencing that same pain. So even if you believe your girlfriend, hold on to a shred of doubt and wonder if the experts might have some wisdom to offer your situation. As I saw someone else mention, the book Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass would be amazingly on point for your situation and might lead you towards some growth here. No matter what you choose, I pray you find peace and joy. Good luck. If the three of us are ever together again, I'll definitely be watching everything, but I don't think there's a chance of that happening for a while. I can admit there's a possibility that Jordan is just wrong about how she feels. After our talk, I do honestly think that's more likely than that she's trying to be dishonest or is gaslighting me. If that turns out to be the case, then that's going to have to be the end of the relationship, but I'm deciding to at least give her a chance here. Specific bag, 7401. A lot of what you detail still sounds weird. Especially the part where she didn't want to make Mark feel left out because he was visiting with a couple, him being a single man. Mark in no way visited with a couple. If Jordan is so empathetic re this issue, she sure missed showing any empathy for you. I don't think you will experience much difference with the next encounter with all three of you. You're very enthusiastic to give Jordan a pass. This will continue to haunt you. You don't seem to think you deserve to have this made right. Jordan has a very wide berth. I wish you the best. You just seem to feel you deserve so little. It's so sad. I do agree with you that it still sounds weird, but with more context I'm just more comfortable with it. Don't get me wrong, I still didn't appreciate being treated like a third wheel at dinner, and I still thought that Mark and Jordan were too handsy with each other just in general, and I'm not okay with that continuing. But if she's being honest with me that it's not because of romantic feelings, which I think she is, then I think as long as she's willing to have boundaries from now on after understanding that it made me uncomfortable, I don't think it's as much of a red flag as I thought before. In a lengthy comment, OOP is asked to consider whether it's not a matter of Jordan believable but that he wants to believe her so strongly that he is subconsciously subverting his standards for judgment. That's a really well thought out comment, and I appreciate you taking the time to write it. And I absolutely do understand why everyone thinks I'm just letting Jordan gaslight me. Honestly, I'd probably think the same thing if someone else was telling me this story, so I can't really blame everyone. But I truly don't think I'm just being steered by wanting to believe her. It's hard to convey everything that happened when we talked into one post, but I'm just very sure that she was being genuine, and it was that convinced me that I could believe that she was saying. It wasn't that I just stopped being objective because that was the easier thing to do. Honestly, I think it would have been easier to keep assuming that what I thought in the first place was true, because honestly it's easier for me to understand. I do think that Jordan's attachment to Mark is weird and probably unhealthy, and even if she doesn't think so, I think there's more than just friendship going on from his side of things. But I think Jordan is being honest that she's not in love with him and that she wants to be with me and not him, and that was the thing that was making me question the relationship. The other stuff that I do still take issue with I think can be worked out as long as Jordan takes seriously that she can't be acting in a way with Mark that disrespects me and our relationship, even if in her head it's not in a romantic way, and from the way our talk went I think I can trust her to do so. Second update, 2.5 months later. I apologize if this isn't right. I've never tried to post to my profile on here before, but a lot of people wanted an update and I don't think I'm allowed to post to the original subreddit. The situation seems pretty resolved now, after Mike and Jordan had an argument over everything and are no longer friends. What happened was that after Jordan told Mark we weren't available to hang out when he came back through our city, he blamed me, saying that he could tell Jordan was only saying no to hanging out because I had a problem with him. Jordan admitted that this was part of the reason and told Mark that she wanted a bit of space from him because she was trying to be respectful of our relationship. Mark got really offended and kept asking Jordan to explain why him being around was disrespectful to our relationship, and kept pretending not to understand her answers. And then eventually during the conversation he started trying to guilt Jordan into making time for him and told her that she's become a worse person over the years, because the Jordan he knew would never blow him off. That upset Jordan a lot because she took it as Mark saying that she was a bad person since she left the church, and she started crying and she ended up hanging up on him. Jordan and I talked a lot afterwards. I told her that I thought Mark was toxic because anyone else would have been understanding of what she said. Jordan said that a lot of what he said during the conversation reminded her of being in the church. She said that she couldn't explain it except that it was his attitude when he tried to argue with her, but that it made her not really want to talk to him even outside of anything to do with our relationship. Mark texted Jordan the day after asking if she really wasn't going to come see him and if she was going to pick some boyfriend over her only friend after he's been there for her through everything. Jordan texted Mark back explaining her point again and saying that their friendship couldn't be the same anymore as it used to be now that she was with someone, and that he should understand that. Mark texted Jordan that he couldn't believe she'd treat her best friend like that. Jordan tried to text Mark saying that a friend wouldn't be guilty of tripping her, but it turned out that he had blocked her number. After that, Jordan was feeling like she'd done something wrong and was too mean to Mark, but she and I talked about it again and she realized that she was right to not want to be friends with Mark if he's going to treat her like she owes him loyalty. Jordan then blocked him back, including on all her socials, so that if later he changes his mind and tries to apologize, she can ignore him. A couple of weeks went by, and while I'll admit I was pretty happy about not hearing from Mark, Jordan was really bummed about how everything ended. She said that although she saw now that Mark isn't a good person to have in her life because of his reaction to her trying to set a boundary, She still felt sad and abandoned, and it was bringing back a lot of the same feelings as when she was a teenager and her other church friends all turned their backs on her. So at this point I asked her if she's ever thought about going to therapy for religious trauma, and she said she'd gone for a few months when she first left the church, but the therapist wasn't really helpful. I suggested that maybe it would be a good idea to try again with a better therapist because it sounds like all this stuff still bothers her a lot, and Jordan agreed with me and decided to make an appointment. She's had a couple of therapy sessions that she says so far are good, but I don't really ask her for any details on what they talk about, so I can't really update on that part of the situation. Relevant comments. Asiktak. Mark sounds toxic at this point. He sounded iffy before, honestly, with the way he was so positive he would have been with Jordan, but this is not the way you treat someone who is supposed to be a friend. He wants to be her number one friend, then he should try actually being a friend and listening. I assume he isn't because in his religion the man is supposed to speak and the woman is supposed to listen. Yes, tell Jordan to try a different therapist. If the therapist isn't working for her, that just means she has the wrong therapist. She can find a good one, and I really hope she does. Agreed. I didn't trust Mark when I thought he was just in love with her, but seeing him be so shitty and demanding really made it clear that he's a POS. Julia Valentine. I've been reading these posts since it first came out, and it sucks that it had to turn out this way, but I think it's for the better. Especially the part of her going back to therapy too. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? Her having her own support system that is separate from you and Mark could also help her. Anyways, wishing you all the best. Jordan seems like a very lovely girl, and I'm glad you both are going strong outside of the trauma. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? She does. We have a few couples that we're pretty close friends with, and she also has a bunch of friends from her work who I know she talks to about problems and all that stuff.